Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I think we're all about ready. We try to start on time, so I'd like to just formally call our Nash County Board of Commissioners recess meeting back to order. And Ms. Wilson?
And at this time, I'll call the Nash Rocky Mount School Board meeting for this joint meeting with the Nash County Commissioners to order.
And it's customary for the Nash County Board of Commissioners to begin each one of our meetings with invocation. You're welcome to join us in the invocation. You're welcome to use the period for a moment of silence, or welcome to use the period to have your individual invocation if you so wish. And I'd like to call on Ms. Barnes, Commissioner Barnes, if she would lead us.
Pray with me. Heavenly Father, we come before you with grateful hearts for all the many blessings that you've given to us. And God, as we approach the holiday season, I just ask that we would stop and take the time to reflect on the true meaning of Christmas, and that is to celebrate the birth of our Savior. I lift up every leader that's here tonight and every elected representative, and I ask that you would give us wisdom and understanding and give us listening ears so that we can do the job that you called us to do. Lord, I also ask that you would help us to accomplish our goals tonight, and we would do that while displaying your character. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Ms. Wilson, would you like to make any opening remarks at this time?
I would. On behalf of our board, I want to thank you all for giving us your time and your attention so that we can collectively work together for the benefit of our students in the Nash Rocky Mount schools. We greatly appreciate this opportunity. You may be aware that our November joint meeting is hosted by the commissioners, while our board serves as the host for the May meeting. Nevertheless, I want to extend my appreciation to Commissioner Davis for allowing us to work jointly on the agenda tonight. Dr. Jeffries, Ms. Edge, and I thought it would be beneficial to share some updates with you on various issues that either are currently impacting our schools or will be in the coming year. I do apologize in advance for the length of the agenda, but I think you will find that many of these items we will move through very quickly. And thank you also for your hospitality and the delicious dinner. We appreciate it.
Sure thing. And I guess I could just say ditto and move to the next item. Our Board of Commissioners certainly appreciates the opportunity to meet with our school board the 2 times a year. As we all know, for a period of time, we were actually required to do this. We're no longer required to do this, but I think we jointly agreed that we would continue meeting twice a year, which is a great aid in my thinking to help us continue to move forward and not let things get too far where they become controversial before we have the time to sit down and talk about them as a group. 2 times a year seems to be working okay. If we need to do more, our board is certainly willing to meet as many times as we can. Y'all got y'all's charge being school board members, and we've got our charge being county commissioners, and it's just needed to meet as frequently as we need to, just so we can make it as simple as we can and stay on the same track and not take opposite tracks. I feel like we may have done that sometimes in the past, but I think if we continue working together, we can certainly avoid that moving forward. Moving on into item 5, the joint meeting and the working relationship, to me, has improved tremendously in the last, I'm going to say 18 months. I feel like we were probably at our low point maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm only talking about the relationship between the 2 boards. When we got out of the situation with establishing what our funding model would look like moving forward, we had some scars, there's no doubt about that. Had some scars that y'all had towards us. We may have had some towards y'all, even though it really wasn't directed at our school board. It was just a matter of we felt like we needed to review the funding model moving forward. And I think this year, to me, we've gone a long ways, I hope, in working much better together and not having controversies. I have certainly enjoyed working with Ms. Edge and your chairman, Ms. Wilson. I think Mr. Outlaw would say the same thing. We occasionally get together just to see where we are at. They have been very productive meetings. We can catch things early when the two elected chairs and vice chairs are communicating, and I've found these two ladies, I guess y'all elect them annually like we do. I'm not sure how you come up with your leadership, but our board in December elects new officers, and could well be just last time you have to hear me talk, I will say. Depends on what we do at our December meeting. But I'm just delighted at the spirit in which the four of us has been able to work together. I think it's evident by us sitting and working on the agenda together. And there's many things that we do that all of our board may not know that we do and have talked about, and all of your board may not know. I'm not sure. I try to share as much as I can when we do meet with our board, as Mr. Outlaw does. But it's just been, to me, the best relationship that I've had with the school board personally since I've been a commissioner, and that's a 16-year period, quite frankly. Donovan, you're smiling at me, and she and I go back a very long ways, but it has just, I just wanted to let you know that it has been very good, quite frankly, and I do appreciate the willingness to sit down and keep us informed, for us to be able to keep you informed. I hope it only gets better. There are other things that we could share and work on early together, particularly you'll hear me talk a little bit later about capital improvements. But again, I just greatly appreciate Ms. Wilson and Ms. Edge, y'all's willingness for us to work through the issues, try to catch them ahead of time. There's small issues, large issues, use of facilities, don't use of facilities, little things like that. They can be resolved before they become a problem. When you resolve them when they're opportunity, when they are still an opportunity, it's much easier than to resolve them after they become a problem. And I just like to work in that fashion, quite frankly. With that little bit of spiel coming from me about the working relationship and the future joint meetings, and I do hope we continue to do these, Ms. Wilson, I'll turn it back over to you for item number 7.
Okay. So one of the areas that Dr. Jeffries and Ms. Edge and I talked about that we really wanted to keep your body informed about is the House Bill 13, which is the legislation that was passed that is, the idea is to keep small class sizes or to ensure small class sizes for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And as frequently happens when legislation gets passed, it presents implementation challenges, which is what we have encountered for not only our district but statewide. And so we wanted to share, as that impacts us, it impacts our children, it impacts our staff. We wanted to kind of share with you, and I believe Mr. Miller is going to provide that for us, with kind of an update on how House Bill affects us this year and how we anticipate it will affect us more greatly in coming years. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Miller, at this point.
While you're getting ready, Mr. Miller, I felt compelled to share with both boards that to echo the sentiment of Commissioner Davis, that the board's working relationship is of critical importance if we're going to succeed as a school district. I've been encouraged by the overtures to try to collaborate when it's appropriate. I'm very appreciative of that. I want to open with a caveat. We're sharing the impacts of recent changes in legislation. I do not want this board to perceive us as saying you own that. I don't think that's fair. But my board has tasked me with making sure that we're transparent in all the dealings, and these changes in legislation are significant. And we just want to start raising an awareness, because if the legislative fixes that have been communicated don't come to fruition, we're going to be in a really difficult circumstance. So we just want to start the conversation early, raising the awareness. Again, it is not appropriate that the buck gets passed to the county commissioners because of changes that they did not initiate. So with that being said, Mr. Miller, if you'll share, please. Thank you, sir.
Just wanted to give you a couple, I think it's 4 slides, talking about the impact of HB 13. Currently, make sure everyone can see. Our current ratios for HB 13 for this particular year are 1 to 23. Obviously, that was already lowered based on the legislation currently, so we had to lower this year's ratios for K through 3, which also included us raising ratios for 4 through 13 from 1 to 23 to 1 to 29 in those particular grade levels. As you will see in 18-19 school year, those ratios are dropping again for K through 3 to 1 to 21, 1 to 19, and 1 to 20. Obviously, that means smaller class sizes, more sections in those particular grade levels, which means we will have to increase fourth grade through 13 from 1 to 24 to 1 to 30. The impact this has on our district right now, basically we're tying it to mobile units. We currently have 21 mobile units that we're currently using throughout our district. Yearly cost about $159,606. That includes insurance and utilities for those particular mobile units. When we add in the actual increase or decrease in K through 3 ratios for next year, we will be looking at adding an additional 20 mobile units to help for the actual size of those particular classes. That's going to increase our actual cost for the mobile units to $323,000. Basically, it increases us $164,000 for the increase in 20 mobile units for next year. An additional impact that we're basically going through now is the decline in state teacher allotment positions. Over the last 5 years, state teacher allotments have declined to the tune of about 37 positions. And you have to just please note that previous year enrollment determines the following year's state teacher allotment. So as you'll see in 2012-13, we had an enrollment of 16,393 students, and that obviously provided us with 717.42 teachers for the 13-14 school year. So again, the enrollment for the previous year provides us with the state allotment for the next year. Basically, the chart just flows the same way, and we have no idea, have the question marks here, because we have no idea what that actual allotment is going to be for next school year, but it is on a declining trend. It's been declining for the last 5 years.
There are a couple of notes that are important to share with both boards. If you go back to that slide, sir, what was buffered, if you see 2012, 13, 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16, for the precipitous loss in students, you may not see a significant drop in the state allocations. That was softened by the fact that districts still had a great deal of flexibility in making trade-ins. For example, TA positions, they could turn into teaching positions. We still had a lot of latitude where we could soften the blow. Where you see that significant drop is when the legislation has been changed to be much more restrictive with our use of categorical dollars, so that flexibility has gone away. And this change in law, there was an increased focus on waivers. The waivers that a district can pursue to allow us to staff a class over those ratios are in a very rigid category. An act of God, hurricanes, weather, things of that nature, significant change in course offerings, or special needs for the students, exceptional children. We are going to be submitting the waivers for the appropriate classes that will be impacted, and we'll have a detailed presentation for our board at the December 5th meeting. But I just thought it was important that you had that context, that we are dealing in a much more restrictive environment, where some of the things we were able to do to soften the impact are no longer at our disposal. We'll take any questions.
One thought came to my mind, and now the legislature did reduce the size of the classroom, the ratio of teacher to students. Knowing that that's going to require a facility, more facility, did they put any money in the budget, in the state budget to take care of that?
That's an excellent question, sir, and the answer is no. There's an additional challenge. Our state used to have 2 categories for staffing public schools. There were enrichment teachers, music, art, PE, and then there were the regular instructional teachers. Once they merged, the increase in allocations was reflected, but now, with this change, we do not have a firm commitment on including an allotment for those enrichment teachers. Now, there have been several commitments verbally, but that has not been etched in stone yet. So that's another thing that we're kind of waiting on to see if we're going to get that commitment of enrichment teachers.
That's the next question. Is you have to add on, according to your plan, there are 21 mobile units.
Yes, sir.
You don't have any empty classrooms in those schools where you have K through 3?
So we've repurposed all of the rooms that serve as a quality instructional environment. We are utilizing.
Seems like the legislature's gonna need to go back to the drawing board. All this needs to be fed into them, so when they get into that short session, that maybe they can take a look at it and amend the budget to help out, because that's a little too much to put on the local boards to come up with the funding.
Along that line, Mr. Belfield, I saw it the same way you did. Are we using the impact on mobile units because it's an easy number to identify, and we may not necessarily be talking about mobile units, or are you indeed, I would think like Mr. Belfield did, that somewhere you got classroom space that you're not utilizing, according to, when you look at your chart, what the capacity of each school is and the number of students there. But that's just a quick overview that I do from time to time.
We welcome you all to come visit and see. We've explored all options: art on a cart, music on a cart. We are maximizing the class spaces that we have, and the impact of mobile units is a bare necessity. It's not a luxury for our district.
Well, Dr. Jeffries, I wasn't asking that question in a sense to question what you were telling me.
And I didn't take it in that spirit, sir.
I was just wondering if we were utilizing that because it was an easy number to identify, when I think we've been working for a number of years to reduce as many mobile classrooms as we can. I would certainly hate to see us go backwards in that, rather than explore some other way of doing it.
And our district is really fortunate that I would say that we have really a 1% professional, top 1% nationally in Shannon Davis. And Mr. Davis, I don't want to put you on the spot, sir, but could you speak to our utilization of our facilities at this point that we've explored, the spaces that we have, and this is not something that we came to lightly?
Yes, sir. This was based on the schools where we didn't have the empty classrooms. So you may be looking at some schools we can maximize the classrooms, but we have certain schools that we may end up pulling in 2 to 3 mobile units on one campus just because we don't have empty seats when you look at the dropping of the class size.
Well, I guess it's important to do things like we're doing tonight, like you said, to let us know this, but on the other hand, if we got some time, sometimes you can do some reshifting of students, or don't like to use the word redistrict, but you may be able to tweak your lines a little bit to utilize the classroom space you have. But there again, that's y'all side of the pie, and we just bring the money to the table. We recognize that, but I sense what you're saying is we need to keep talking to our legislators and tell them along with some of the things they do comes other costs, and we realize they are pretty frequently sending down mandates and not sending any funds with it, and that's what we fight through our association all the time. So I certainly can understand what you're saying, that we do have a requirement here that didn't have the funds for capital needs to go along with it. And I'm sure there's some school districts that probably don't have a single classroom space available, some of the smaller ones.
Yes, sir.
I was going to say, is it okay?
Sure, excuse me.
Ms. Edge?
Yes, and I think you should be aware of another challenge we're going to have. In addition to having the space and the facilities, we're going to need staff to go into those classrooms. And I know parents get concerned when there's not a certified person to go in there, but we're already having problems with finding certified people at our present situation. So I think you should be aware of us trying to find certified people and using alternative requirements for teachers to go into those facilities once we have them. I just want to put that on the table.
Sure.
Ms. Bullock?
I also wanted to ask Dr. Jeffries or Mr. Miller if they would speak to the fact that previously we were able to have, we had the flexibility that when we assigned our teachers and we had our funding, that we could pay the higher cost teacher to the state. That flexibility is no longer, and when we did that, we could get the state dollars to pay the higher salaried teacher, but then we could do more then with the local dollars, and we don't have that flexibility anymore. And I think that's something that we might need to also put on the table that you may not be aware of.
And that's an excellent point, Mrs. Bullock. When I referenced the limitations that have been placed on districts, that is exactly one of the items that the flexibility went away. And so basically, our most expensive teachers are our most senior teachers who have the most experience. When we were still allowed to make transitions on making sure that all of our most experienced teachers were on the state coffers, we were able to maximize on those on our local dollars as well in terms of getting more for more bang for our buck. When those transfers were eliminated, we felt the brunt, so to speak, that we're not able to make some of those adjustments. They've also made restrictions on categorical dollars. We were able to, through, and again, this was all legal and above board, making those adjustments in terms of our most expensive teachers. We were able to expand those dollars and get more for our money. But now, with the restrictive nature of the changes of legislature, we don't have those options anymore.
How do you determine then who the state funds from your classroom teachers?
Right now, it's when it's based on their entry to the district and the hiring. So if they've been embedded with the district, or at least the most recently hired are the ones that are going to be on our local dollars. We do not have the flexibility to shift.
So the most recently hired are on local dollars?
Yes, sir.
So wouldn't that indicate then if your most senior teachers make the most money that they would be on the?
Not actually, sir. We hire teachers who have more experience. We're fortunate to recruit them.
I'm just trying to figure out how do you determine who the state funds and who you fund locally?
Right. So those who are on the rosters now we go all the way up until that state allotment, and it's based on hire date. After that hire date, we start addressing with when we exhaust the state allocation, we go with.
So you start with your least senior and keep going up?
No, we can't do that anymore. We start with the point of entry to the district, when they were engaged, when they were hired with the district, and then we exhaust the state allocation.
And when did they change that?
When was that changed? 2 or 3 years. We've had that challenge.
They recently made a mandate that we can't, our AIG teachers, that they're funding in lump sum. And some of our most experienced teachers are our AIG teachers. And so that shrinks our ability to utilize that piece. In other words, AIG position that where you have your most experienced teacher making $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year is based on a lump sum. Once you've exhausted that, they did that with our administration about 8-10 years ago, where they give us a lump sum and then we have to fit the positions into it. Now we have to do it with the teaching positions, where in the past, they would fund any teacher as long as they were in that allotment.
How many classroom teachers are funded with, I'm talking about classroom teachers, are funded with local money?
We'll have to get that information.
Can you get that, and
We
also, so I can better understand what you're talking about here, can you summarize that and give us that so I can sit down and actually let it sink in?
Yes, sir. I'll make sure both boards have that information.
Okay.
Last year's budget presentation, I think it was 21, but y'all might have added some since then.
Mr. Belfield?
Am I reading this right? I'm thinking about something I read, and the conversation here about your experienced teachers and least experienced teachers, that the legislature want to concentrate on the teachers at the lower end of the salary scale to bring them up for retention.
That's been the language, and what you're hearing is the state average. The state average has been their focus because of our ranking nationally. They've been focusing on trying to bring up those lower in the scale.
And almost freezing at the top.
Are there any other questions from our
Yeah, I
board?
just got couple things with that. Now, back to the utilization of the facility.
Yes, sir.
If you were not concerned, and I know you are, and we would be too, about redistricting, if you just looked at the total number of students versus the space available, and just for a moment forgot the fact that you would have to redistrict, would you still be short space?
The challenge with that question, and I understand your intent, our board has been very intentional in stating to the public that any reassignments or redistricting would be intentionally pursued. They would involve the stakeholders and so we haven't made that assessment. And I want to be cautious because it is an open meeting and how things can be misconstrued, that the board has been resolute in their task with me that any discussions, any considerations related to reassignments and redistricting would be intentionally pursued and involve those communities that may be impacted.
Could you look at that and provide us with that information, availability of space versus students, and then see if it would be a fit? And the final thing I wanted to ask, if you go back to decline in state teacher allotments, and I'm just trying to understand this. If you go to 13-14 and you look at the school enrollment and the state teacher allotments, it comes out to a little over 1 teacher per 22. I just did the math on that. If you go over to 17-18 and you do the same math, it's about the same thing. It's actually slightly less teacher ratio to students. So I guess I'm trying to figure out in my mind, why do we have a problem with teachers if we basically got the same ratio of students to teachers?
So what that doesn't account for, when you look at the impact of lowering class size in K-3, you raise class size in 412.
Is that very important to you?
That is the impact of
Is
that.
that a critical thing?
Help me understand the question. Is lowering class size important, or the
Yes.
fact that it increases those?
Both.
Both. So for me, it all boils down to teacher quality. There are two schools of thought that lowering the class size is the silver bullet. I happen to disagree with that because of experience. My belief and my experience is if you have a quality teacher in front, of those students on a daily basis, they can move them. The challenges we have is with a heavy novice teacher force, and I mean more than a third of our teachers come from non-traditional paths and are in the first 3 years. It is a very difficult enterprise to ask them to teach a class with 30 students, and they're still learning how to apply their craft. So it plays out in very difficult ways. But do I believe that the intention of lowering class size was a good intention? I do believe that.
Yes, I do.
But in terms of the application and for what it means for practitioners, it's a much more nuanced challenge, and there are no two districts that are alike.
Okay, so it's important, at least in the current environment, you would say, to reduce classroom size.
There are appropriate applications of that,
That may be a key aspect in improving performance.
But you can't, and I want to qualify it by saying you cannot extract teacher quality from the equation. Low class size with an ineffective teacher is still going to bear you ineffective results.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Dr. Jeffries and Mr. Miller? I think we're ready to move on. Mr.
Okay,
Davis.
we'll move on to item number item number 8. That item is on here, and those of y'all that have known me a long time, like Donovan know, I'll just get to the point, but we have heard, or I have heard numerous times throughout the years, a concern about the county's fund balance as it relates to how much fund balance we may carry. A former board member that you had that's no longer on your board actually questioned it very intense and abrupt in a public meeting one time, and I've also heard that some of your current board members may have a concern about why Nash County likes to keep the fund balance that it does. And so I've asked Mr. Lamb if he would tonight to explain our board's philosophy on the way we look at fund balance. And once he gets through, if you got any questions at all, Nash County has had at least 40-year history, regardless of who the commissioners were, of carrying a very adequate fund balance. The state, as we know, requires us to carry 8%. 8% is a 1-month fund balance. I would hate to think, now we've got counties that have an 8% fund balance, and some of them they just can't do any better, I don't know. But I would hate to be a commissioner in Nash County and have to sleep at night knowing we had operating expenses for 1 month, because we have so many different things that fund balance has to cover. And one of them is certainly schools, but there are many, many others. And we've got times in our history, and I may be talking too much, because he may be going to tell us all this, and I'll be quiet, but where it took a large volume of our fund balance to get through what we had to get through. Certainly, over a 2 or 3 year period, it may start showing back up by whatever method it shows back up, but we just want help y'all understand the way our board looks at fund balance. Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and members of the school board. I'm going to not speak very long, but just talk a little bit about county fund balances, and if y'all want to ask any questions afterwards or in the future, feel free to contact me or ask a question after I finish. I think everyone knows that the state, Mr. Davis, Chairman Davis mentioned the 8%. That is an absolute minimum that the state recommends. And if you get less than 10%, you will get a letter from the LGC and telling you to raise taxes or do whatever is necessary to increase that fund balance. And I want you to know that our fund balance is your fund balance. That's the way it is in North Carolina. Y'all don't have independent taxing authority. If a fire hits one of your schools and we need to make immediate provisions, you know, we step in and we help the situation. We do have a comfortable fund balance. I can tell you, my other two counties I was manager in, one of them had less than 10%, or about $2 million, and the next one had zero, Chowan County. And they have built theirs back up to about 35%. It took about 4 or 5 years. They were spending $3 million more than they were bringing in, and they weren't, and it wasn't sustainable. You know, we have our water system, we have solid waste, we have the landfill, we have a sewer system, we have the sheriff's department, we have county buildings. We need to maintain a comfortable fund balance. One of the reasons is our bond rating. Our bond rating right now is AA2 on Moody's, with Moody's. And there's only 10 counties in North Carolina with a higher fund balance, with a higher bond rating than us. 7 of those counties are more than 250,000 people. One is about 195,000 people, and one, like us, is between 50 and 100,000 people. That's a good thing, to have a good bond rating. It's not something to apologize for. And I just want y'all to know that maintaining that high fund balance is one of the most important factors when the folks in New York give us a bond rating. Our excellent bond rating, since I've been here 4 years, has allowed us to finance some large projects at very favorable rates. 2 were refinances, the COPS that we did that included schools. We got a 1.42% refinance rate from Southern Bank there. We've had a 2.07 rate, and the courthouse project, which we had money in the bank that we could have spent $14 million, or we could have borrowed 10 and used $4 million out of our fund balance, but we got a rate of 1.85%. So we borrowed $14 million, and we maintained that high fund balance in order to maintain our high bond rating. Our fund balance as a percentage of expenditures is 22nd in the state. A strong fund balance allows us to pay for pay-as-you-go for smaller projects without threatening our bond rating. The $750,000 that the commissioners set aside in June for the early college, we're not going to need to borrow money for the early college. We're going to be able to do it pay-as-you-go. But a $14 million project like the courthouse, it made sense to borrow money. The sheriff last year needed new radios. It's about $500,000. Most counties, even this county in the past, would have financed those radios for 3 to 7 years. The commissioners were able to pay for the entire amount of money, just like they can for the early college. When we have a Floyd, Hurricane Floyd, and other natural disasters, it takes a hit. Even though we're going to get most of the money back from FEMA, FEMA doesn't drop the money out of the sky the next day. Ask the people in Puerto Rico right now. It takes time to get that money back, but you've got to make provisions in the meantime to fund the things that need to be funded. I'm talking about personnel, emergency personnel, and other needs that occur. Floyd was before my time, but I've been told that the county had to upfront 60%, over 60% of its fund balance for Floyd recovery. Like, again, most of that money was reimbursed by FEMA and the feds and the state, but it took a lot of months to get that money. Again, I mentioned if a school burns down, you might have insurance, but if it's an older school, I'm not sure how your insurance is. Maybe you get replacement costs, but my guess is you get depreciated money from the insurance provider. So the county would step in and help the school system at the time they would lose such a facility. If the courthouse burned down, we've had 2 courthouses burned down in North Carolina in the last couple of years. You know, we've got to come in quick, and we've got to provide facilities, whether it's temporary space or whatever. So it is very important that we have a good fund balance. As you know, our budget year begins July 1. We give y'all 1/12 each month, at the beginning of the month, I believe, for your current expense. Over half of our revenues are property tax, and we might send out the bill the end of July, early August, and we might get 5 or 10% of that by the end of September. But until the middle of the fall, we're spending more money than we're bringing in, because if you're like me, you pay your taxes on December 31st. So we need several months of fund balance to carry us. Sales tax revenues, they lag 2 months. So the first 4 or 5 months of the year, we are spending more money than we bring in. Now, in November, December, and January, that fund gets replenished because people come down and they pay their taxes. So I just want y'all to know that it's fiscally responsible to maintain a fund balance. 37% fund balance is only 4 months of operation costs. It sounds like a lot, but it's in a bad situation, hurricane, natural disaster, other natural disaster, and in this day and age, so many things could happen, that we need those reserves in order to not only maintain our bond rating, but to also to stabilize our budgets in bad times. This year, well, from June of 15 to June 16, we haven't gotten the 17 audit yet. Our fund balance actually went down $988,000. So the commissioners aren't every year adding to the fund balance. They should be congratulated for years of very astute and fiscal austerity in maintaining that fund balance. I was lucky when I got here 4 years ago. It's about the same percentage fund balance as it is right now. And so I didn't have to dig us out of a hole like I've done in other counties, or help do in other counties, help the commissioners do. But I just want you to know that we're not hoarding money because we want to hoard money. We've got a fund balance to help our bond rating and to help us in case of emergencies. And that's the justification for 4 months of fund balance. If there's any questions.
With you, what our fund balance is and a breakdown of restricted versus unrestricted. I don't know if you brought that with you, but do you have that you could share with us?
Yes. The figure that the LGC uses as a percentage of your expenditures to give you your percentage is what's called the available fund balance available, and it's $33 million as of June of 16. Then it's what's called the unassigned fund balance, and that's $27 million. And then if you add all our funds together, including water, solid waste, and we've got to maintain, what, $2 million or $3 million at all time for future closeout of our landfill. That's money we can't spend. We've got to have it. That figure as of the end of 16 was $40 million. And we've got a $90 million general fund, plus a water fund, plus a solid waste fund, plus a sewer fund. So that's, in a nutshell, that explains why we must maintain a good fund balance. Take, for example, the Northern Nash Elementary School. We hope to get some grant money for that. But sooner or later, whether we get grant money or not, we're going to have to build new schools. And so if we allow our fund balance to dip to $10 million, it will cost us millions of dollars in additional interest to get a loan and to pay for that fund, for that new school. So there's more I could talk about, but if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer your questions at this time. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Bullock.
I think we do have some. I saw Ms. Bullock's hand up and Mr. Dahl's hand.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. And that comment is, I commend you for your fund balance. My problem is, though, that without new funding streams, we have had to use our fund balance to balance our budget just to stay above the water. And that is very troubling to me. But I do commend you, because I understand the concept that you, even in my private financial life, I need some money to be able to fall back on, to use if something unexpected happens. So yeah, fund balances are important. And it troubles me that ours is dwindling.
Yeah, and that's a combination of things. It's less money from the state. We did have a 3-year agreement where we increased to get the supplements up from 6% to 10% and increased funding, I think about $500,000 a year. The first year, maybe $300,000 the next 2 years. And I believe the commissioners are interested in looking at the supplements. Seems like every time we go up, our neighbors go up more. But y'all are to be congratulated. That was a joint initiative between the two boards to raise that supplement to 10% for bachelor, a little bit more for masters and doctorates. But yes, thank you.
Said there, there's been times in the past when the school system has had a very substantial fund balance to the tune of 12, 13, 14 million dollars. It is our belief of the commissioners that it's not necessary for you to have that kind of fund balance. Certainly you don't want to be broke, and you want to have some fund balance, but we consider ourselves to be your fund balance for the most part. Not day-to-day stuff, but we shouldn't have $14 million sitting in the school system fund balance. I don't know what that number is. I know you don't anymore.
We don't.
But what what I'd like for y'all to understand is that our opinion is, and of course, the people on that side of the table understand much more what your fund balance needs to be than any of us, certainly than I do. But we do want you to know, we recognize that we should be your fund balance, for the most part.
Yeah. And Commissioner Davis, when we had our last audit, the auditor was a little bit concerned
Right. I
about
remember that.
our fund balance, and he was less concerned last year than he was this year. And for the good health of the district, we too need at least a 3-month cushion in order to be comfortable should something come up unexpectedly, and we are in a difficult situation now. So it's good to know that when things really get worse than they are, that we can look to your board and your fellow commissioners to help us as we help our kids.
And I would like to make it clear that our number one rule on our board, from instructions from our manager and most managers we've had, the very first rule we have on spending fund balance is that we want to spend that fund balance only on non-reoccurring expenses, one-time expenditures. That's where our comfort level starts at. We put the brakes on very, very quickly when we're talking about spending fund balance on reoccurring expenses. And Ms. Lamb, you may want to make that clearer than what I did.
Well, we do appropriate from fund balance, but that's recognizing that we're conservative on our revenue estimates, and we're not going to spend all our appropriations. So every year I've been here, even though we might have budgeted $2 or $3 million from fund balance, we've never had to use it. And it's probably been that way even before I got here. Because we don't spend all our appropriations, and you don't want to be too aggressive on your revenue estimates. You don't want to underestimate them ridiculously, but we have had a couple revenue streams that have occurred in the last couple years that until we had history, like the Article 44 sales tax that we're getting about $600,000 a year. The first year we didn't appropriate it because we didn't have history. This year we were able to appropriate, anticipate revenues from that sales tax. So, but I understand what you're saying. We all need to be able to have some cash to help us during the year. But again, as Mr. Davis said, we are your fund balance, and we do give you 1/12 of your, and of course, most of y'all know the state provides probably $100 million a year or 80, 90 million a year, and we provide 20 to 25 million if you include capital, so and debt service. So we have the fund balance to help y'all in emergencies.
I thought you may mention this, is we've got some things coming up very shortly that we've worked on for about the last 12 months, really 2 items that will be one-time expenditures, and those type things we don't mind using our fund balance for because they're not reoccurring. But one of those items is a very important item to y'all, I think, also is, and I won't say a whole lot because we're still in negotiations with the provider, but our board has put pretty much its number one priority for a new item is to extend our internet service throughout the county much better than what we've got. We've got a lot of areas that are not served. We've got a lot of areas that are underserved. We have met Ms. Barnes for 18 months trying to resolve this issue. It is a very complicated issue. And we've just come to recognize the county's going to have to spend some money to fix that. We're trying to get a partnership with a provider because we are not allowed to go in certain utilities, and internet services is one of them. We've got a little bit of tweaking in state laws that allow us to assist a private provider, and that's what we're looking at. That's going to be a pretty large expenditure for us.
And you may not know this, but we determined today that we're going to have to do an RFP for that.
Okay, I do not know that.
Yeah, and we're anticipating so that the Chromebook, y'all have Chromebooks in the classroom? We're told that many students cannot use them at home because they don't have internet access. So the commissioners want to, and they're willing to spend several $1 million to extend internet access throughout 99% of the county. I don't want to say 100%.
We'll never get it all, but
yeah,
we're not only been challenged by the school system and the students who need it so desperately, we're also every year finding more and more people that work from home. As we industry cut back, do away with facilities, a lot of people work out of the homes, and we are getting hammered in those outlying areas by those people that are now working at home that just struggle to work from home because they don't have adequate internet service. The other thing is we have just got to upgrade. We have done our sheriff department, but we've got a very large expenditure coming forth, one-time expenditure on our radio system for our emergency services and volunteer fire departments throughout the county. We've got to resolve that issue. It's another several $1 million.
2 to 3 million.
Yeah, 2 to 3 million that we've got to resolve. We've been working on about 12 months. So we've got some things that are one-time expenditures. Those are the ones that we can swallow and spend fund balance for. Of course, what I anticipate to happen is we spend out fund balance. Mr. Lamb's going to want us to go try to find some more money at 1.8%, which as long as we can borrow money at 1.8%, we certainly don't mind borrowing and putting it back in the fund balance. But I don't know how long those days will be here. But certainly we'll try that. But for right now, we've got to get those two problems resolved, and it will be done through utilizing some of our fund balance that we have.
Mr. Dodd, do you still have a question?
I don't have a question. I equally with Ms. Bullock, I just wanted to say, really, I'm new to this board. I've only been on the board for 3 years, but I'm not new to education. But everyone in this room, if it wasn't for education, we wouldn't be where we are now. We're all educated professionals, and we from Nash County, most of us have been here a while and understand where we are. And it just, it hurts a little bit to know that we're, of 115 school systems in the state, we're in the bottom 5. And I don't think that's company that we enjoy keeping. That's not where we are. And I think with the cuts that we've made, the 3 years I've been on the boards, and I really appreciate what you've done, because we've lost students. We've lost almost 1,200 students in 5 years. And you continued, all 7 of you continued to fund us at the same rate. And that's commendable. And you should applaud yourself for that. But at the same time, I feel like being a former, and probably I'm the only one in this room, other than Dr. Jeffries, that has been in that role as administrator at the central office level, and realize that we're in a survival mode in our county, because nothing that these county commissioners here have done, nothing that you've done at all. We have just got a perfect storm going for us. We're a low-performing school system. Our class sizes are going out the roof. Our quality of staff that Dr. Jeffrey so eloquently described is not where it was when I was a principal. And our test scores are not where they need to be. And we can't just keep pouring money, but at the same time, we've got to address not only appreciate the supplements, that's a good thing, but teaching is a tough job. And there's a big difference between having 25 students in a class with Miss Edge, Miss Brown, Lamb, and myself were in the principalship. And now in our 412 schools, we have over 30, sometimes 35, even 39 in our high schools. There's a big difference in trying to deal with all the society problems that we have with children, and we can't seem to get the funds we need. We've taken effort. The 3 years I've been on the board, we have cut, and we have cut, and we have cut. We looked at the green report that you guys provided for us, and we've done everything that we possibly could do to address that green report and try to do what we can do. All I know is I'm really, really glad to see us sitting here and discussing these things, and hopefully we'll continue to discuss some things to educate, so we can be educated. Mr. Lamb, you've educated me tremendously tonight. I've forgotten about water systems and solid waste, and I know it's there, but I've forgotten those things, and I appreciate you telling us that, and I'm learning. And I'm hoping that you are going to learn some things from us. And the more that we communicate, we got a board member here who has a career in communications, sitting over there with that hat on right there. I mean, that's how we build relationships. We build relationships because we work together and we communicate together. So my thoughts are, let's keep going. Let's keep sitting down and being honest and being transparent. The superintendent here has pointed out to me several times, our county commissioners are doing really well with us, but we've got to continue to show them how they can help us. Thank you.
I'll point out, since you brought it up, our Citizen Academy starts back over. If you want to learn any more about the county, we'd be glad to have any of you. I'll spend a few weeks with us on Thursday night.
13 weeks.
13 weeks, yes, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Belfield.
Mr. Dobbs' comments. One thing we talk about low performing, and we do need to be concerned about it. But there's so many social issues out here in society that these children are facing, and it's hindering them from, in my opinion, there's too much going on to keep their attention focused on academics and learning, in the learning process in the school system. So I just don't see us blaming the school system for all of this, because there's social issues out here. And you got a lot of students, the parents move in a 9-month period from one place to another. And when you disrupt a student moving into a different environment, it has an impact on them. So all these things, a lot of people not looking at it from that standpoint. But these social issues is definitely affecting the way these students perform. And those who keep lambasting the school system, and I'm talking about on the federal level and on the state level, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. They need to look at the totality of what society is doing with these kids. Another question, I want to ask this question. If you're building a new project, a new school, or whatever, do you have to put that, if you're setting aside money so you can do that, do you have to put that in your fund balance? I'm thinking about when, I can remember when you built Rocky Mount High School, you had $14 million that, according to the superintendent then, who told me that we've been setting aside money for building the school.
I'll answer that for you, if I could, Mr. Belfield. That's the type thing that we feel like they shouldn't be set aside fund balance for. That's our job to do that.
Well,
It has happened in the past. I don't think it can happen from what I'm hearing tonight in the future anyway, so that's probably a non-issue. Yeah, it's a non-issue anymore, I do believe.
Yeah, their fund balance, I would say, is primarily intended for current expenses.
Current expenses, exactly.
Well, yeah, but I understand that.
Now, I mean,
There are some things that you can do that, I don't know any laws that you can't peek through them. And I hope you understand what I said when I say that.
I think certainly our finances at this point in time, we're not in a position to be able to set aside any money in any fund to go towards a capital budget like that. Our fund balance is lower than we would like it to be, than our auditors are comfortable with, and that is certainly for our current expenses. If we have to invade it, it would be for that. Ms. Chavis.
So first, I'd like to say thank you all. I think it is a positive move for both boards to have some open communication. That's why I've been sitting over here smiling, Mr. Davis. And one of the things that I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about class sizes, it seems to me from the State School Board Association conference that a lot of us attended recently, it's a shell game going on pretty much at our state level. At one point, budgeting was in place as a fixed thing for school systems. The lottery was introduced as a wonderful kick in the behind to help us out a little bit, supposedly to decrease the number of students and improve the class sizing situation. However, now if you look at the lottery funding, a lot of the initial reasons it was there or things it was to support have gone completely away. And I think a lot of that falls back again on us having to be creative to figure out how to fix things that we don't have the monies to fix, the mandates that are non-funded. And it's not fair, but I think our commissions could help us some with that Raleigh piece of communication because the lottery should be for education, and that's what the public was sold the bill of goods for it for. And yet, not one dime, as we were told recently, is going now to decrease the sizes of classes.
yeah, let me address briefly the lottery bill that passed 10 years ago. Right after that passed, there was supposed to, on current expense, not supplant for state funding for education. And there was supposed to be a 40% set aside for new construction and renovations. Right after that, the Great Recession occurred. Beginning in 2010, the legislature did two things. They started supplanting the current expense, and they put a $100 million cap on school construction. That 40% became $100 million. Right now, if we were getting 40%, it'd be like $280 million, but we're only getting $100 million. I will say, as y'all know, the General Assembly did this year increase that lottery funding for school construction, targeting at Tier 1 and Tier 2 schools at the tune of $75 million. So that's, you can say they're putting in $175 million now for school construction. And hopefully one day we'll get some of that money, but we can't count on it.
That is true, but the piece that was supposed to go to the classroom size is zeroed out. Is that correct?
I don't know the exact numbers. I have been told
zero.
that there has been supplanting both the prior when the Democrats were in charge and now with the Republicans in charge. But I'll finish if no one else has anything. And I want y'all to know that I know the commissioners want to work with y'all, and it sounds like y'all want to work with us. In North Carolina, we're a minority state in the sense that y'all don't have independent taxing authority. And therefore, we have this relationship between our boards. In most states, y'all have your own tax. You don't even have to deal with the Board of Supervisors or the county judges or the Board of Commissioners. But this is the system we have. And so in a lot of counties, there is a lot of animosity between our two boards. In a few counties, they get along just great. And it's important that we all work together to make sure that we don't have that animosity. And I know the commissioners are absolutely committed to working with y'all. We realize current expense is your purview. We give you a flat amount of money. Our role is with capital improvements. That's really where we need to work with y'all to improve our school buildings and facilities. So I appreciate your time.
Would any other questions on fund balance?
Mr. Shaw.
Robbie, I'm sorry. But see, real quick, you talked about the fund balance that we currently have. You're at 37% of your fund balance, 37%. How does that compare to other counties similar to our district?
We're, as a percentage of expenditures, we're 22nd in the state out of 100 counties. But that's a good thing. I wish we were first.
Absolutely. I think it's great too. So
Yeah.
what it sounds to me, if you, of the reasonable deduction, you're rated for, if a district our size, you're probably at the top of the chain. When it comes to our size district comparable to other districts in the state, Nash County is probably at the top of the chain when it comes to fund balance.
Well, we're the 30th largest county population-wise. Our school district, though, is larger than our population base because we do have the Edgecombe County Rocky Mount part. So, you know, for our county size, like I said, we're 22nd in the state, and population-wise, we're 30 and 31st, something like that.
Well, what I also know is we have two distinct, very intelligent individuals leading both boards, yourself and Dr. Jeffries. And what I would think is I would see more, love to see more of you guys collaborating together, working out whatever the boards need. Because I know Dr. Jeffries does an outstanding job reporting back to the boards what some of our needs are. So I know if, and I don't know how often you guys just meet to collaborate, but I think it's essential because you guys are the ones that have boots on the ground. You see the day-to-day expenses and everything else that comes along with that. So I'd like to see more of you two collaborating together and basically coming back to our distinguished boards, just telling what you guys came up with, what are some of the needs, and how we can work more effectively in getting things done for our constituents.
I'm willing and ready to work any way that will benefit the school children of this county.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. We appreciate
Any of our board members have any questions on fund balance? I think we hear it quite a bit.
But comment, you want to keep your fund balance so you can keep your bond rating good. And if you using your fund balance to balance your budget consecutive years, then bond raters are going to take a look at that, and they may reduce it.
I think our vote's always been 7-0 on that whole subject matter.
Yeah, well, I just thought we need to comment on that.
Okay. Ms. Wilson, next item, item 9 is on your side of the agenda.
Okay, yeah. So another issue we wanted to update you all, and this one has not, I think, gotten to kind of mainstream as much, but it's going to impact, or has the potential to impact our people. You all have shown a lot of desire to support our staff, whether they be teachers in the classroom or administrators. And there has been a change in the principal pay structure and the assistant principal pay structure that was in the last budget bill that Dr. Jeffries is going to share with you all, because we are concerned that it could cause us to lose some good experienced administrators. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson, and thank you again to both bodies for this opportunity. I'd be remiss not to take a moment to capitalize on the goodwill in the room. The rationale that Mr. Lamb just laid out makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense from the perspective of this body. We understand that. The challenge for us is the work of my board is a little bit more nuanced. And I'll talk about the question about available seats, number of students, should be easy to calculate. The challenge comes when students don't come in neat little packages of 18, 17, and 24. It's much more nuanced than that when you have to figure out about space and trying to make sure that we can accommodate for the classes and the populations that we have. And then the emotional component. I wish that it was as simple as we want to be fiscally sound. And we are tasked with sound stewardship, but we also have to deal with the emotions attached with our enterprise. Case in point, us applying for that application for those new dollars for capital, I thought was a home run. In our local media, the first thing that it talked about was us having to redistrict students, and the volume of calls to my board members went up significantly. So that's why when we talk about how we're going to find a way forward, we have to be very mindful, because what's discussed at an important meeting like this, at this dais, some folks can misconstrue as a decision was made this evening. And all we're doing is having an open discourse about your frame of thought, how you go about budgeting, and we're presenting what we perceive to be some challenges on the horizon. But I'm very encouraged by both boards taking the time this evening. One of the challenges that we anticipate, there's been a significant shift in the law pertaining to North Carolina principal and assistant principal staffing. What you'll see is the new principal schedule. The left column is the ADM, that's the new ranges for which they will base the principal's base salary. That MET growth component is based on the EVAS, Education Value Added system, that measures all of our accountability measures and the growth that a school has made or not made in 180 days. So you see the far to right, MET growth, exceeded growth. Those make a determination on if there will be an increase above that allocation of students. So placement on the scale will be determined according to ADM of the current school year and school growth for each school the principal has supervised for at least 2 of the previous 3 years. So they'll look at a span of data for a 3-year period. If I as a principal have met growth for 2 of those 3 years, I move up to the met growth column for my base salary. If I've met or exceeded growth in the 2 of the 3 years, I move up to exceeded. The MET growth column is 2 of the 3 previous years, MET growth, and the principal supervised the school or was not eligible to receive the growth for 2 of the last 3 years. So that base column is what I want to draw your attention to, because that means a principal did not meet or exceed growth 2 of the last 3 years, or has not been a principal for 2 or 3 years. The bonus structure has changed. You see the increments of top 5% in the state, top 10, 15, 20, and 50. There will be only 1 bonus assigned to principals. Bonuses are based on whether a principal supervised the school the previous year that was in the top 50% or above in school growth in the state. The principal may only receive 1 bonus from this chart. It is retroactive in that the principal supervised the same school since 2015-16, or the school is designated having met or not met expected growth in 2015-16, but exceeded growth in 2016-17, so one of those 2 years. The bonus is $5,000 or $10,000 if the school had a D or F letter grade in the 2015-16 year. It's worth noting that it's not counted toward retirement and does not apply to principals who stopped working before July 2017. One of the more impactful things is that longevity is now included in salary. There will be no more standalone payments for longevity. The hold harmless provision is what I want to draw your attention to the most. This has been year one for implementation, so we've taken a great detail to meet individually with our principals and assistant principals to explain their placement on the scale, to explain the impact and future impacts. But this year, we've been graced with a hold harmless year. And I'll talk to you about the importance of that in a little bit. But the hold harmless provision for principals is only for the 2017-18 academic year, and it's the greater of the following: new salary schedule or the salary the principal received in the previous 16-17 academic year, and that's including longevity if they were eligible for a longevity payment during that year. The assistant principal salary schedule is the teacher schedule, the A schedule, plus 17%, plus a degree stipend. That's not going away. That's either $126 or $253. There is no longevity for APs. They do have the hold harmless provision. The AP will receive the greater of the following: the new salary schedule or the salary the AP made in 2016-17. And it will include longevity if they were eligible during the 16-17 academic year. This, again, applies only to this year, 2017-18. Beginning in 2018-19, the way the law is still represented, teacher salary schedule will be plus 19%. Now, the hold harmless provision eclipses this year. Right now for Nash Rocky Mount, a significant number of our principals and assistant principals have been saved by the hold harmless provision. The range and potential impact to their salaries spans from $1,000 annually to $11,000 annually. My philosophy of education is really simple. I believe in the rule of parsimony. Make it as simple as possible without losing the impact. If you want to transform schools or a school system, it starts with exceptional leaders. And there's a reason for that. Because great leaders can attract great teachers. They happen to congregate around folks who are the most talented in leadership. It's a truism in the field. If you want to transform a district or a school, you've got to have exceptional teachers. These changes, while they may have been well-intentioned, I'm not casting aspersions and I'm not making indictments, but they position our district where if we are confronting administrators losing annual salary, that we could have a talent drain in this system. Nash Rocky Mount is very fortunate. I think we have exceptional leaders in our school. I think we're equipped to address the significant challenges that we confront in our community. If there is not a legislative fix as it relates to exploring this hold harmless provision, we are going to have some serious challenges in terms of holding on to talent, some of the most critical talent in the system. I'll take any questions that you may have.
A range of what the total effect on our system would be?
We are preparing that for our board. We'll make sure we share that with you as well.
But you gave a range per person of 1,000.
And that's on individuals as low as 1,000,
right,
but as much as 11,000. These are cases that I've been personally made aware of. I've not gone through the entire impact for the district.
But you will be able to share that number?
Yes, I'll be able to articulate the exact impact and quantify that for you.
Don't forget, I've asked you to use math major words when you explain something to us.
Say that one more time, I missed you.
Don't forget, I asked you to use math major words when you go to explaining something to us.
Any other questions?
So basically, this year, it didn't affect us simply because we got what you called it to be a bye year. Hold harmless, right, okay.
And on its face, that could be the case, but realistically, Commissioner Davis, folks that are worth their salt are not gonna wait around.
Well, that was gonna be my next question. I
They're
mean,
not gonna
they've
wait
gotta be
around to
aware
see
of it.
if we get it figured out. So I would promote, and talking to some of my colleagues statewide, it's not been a scientific poll,
Right.
but we all have apprehensions that we've already lost some talent that we couldn't afford to lose. If we don't get this corrected, or we're not able to work on something locally where we're able to try to make these folks whole, my fear is that the states of Virginia and South Carolina that border us are gonna get fat with some really talented administrators.
Well, that's where I was going. If we're all in North Carolina feeding out the same spoon, they've got to leave the state to help themselves, but.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
One example, Mr. Davis, and I think you relate to that. I don't want to get into names, but I'll tell you. We recently lost one of our most experienced elementary principals that was at a D school. And I'll tell you the school, it was Inglewood School. She went to Wilson. And I called her because she was one of my teachers at one time at Edwards Middle School. And she rose up to the principalship. And she's also the daughter-in-law of one of my best friends in the whole world. He's deceased, Dudley Whitley. You've heard that name.
I know the person you speak
and
about.
I asked her, what in the world are you doing? She said, and look at and I had a copy of this thanks to Dr. Jeffries, and I looked at it, she said, because she's going from Inglewood School, which is a D school, to New Hope Elementary in Wilson, she would get $10,000 more a year. And she's in her 25th or 26th year, so that's going to impact her retirement for the rest of her life. And we can't, that's one example. There's probably 3 or 4 more that we could, but what I'm trying to say is it is impacting us, even though we're in a whole harmless situation. And, you know, we're fortunate though, we have good people and we've been able to hire someone in that job that is going to do a really good job, but we can't keep getting that hit. We just can't.
I guess y'all's association works on this thing like our association does every day.
Absolutely.
Yes, Mr. Fairfield.
Just a comment in connection with that. You know, people are free to move, go where they want to. It's good to have a good training program, excuse me, training program in place where you have people that can step in there and see what you're doing is internal promotion. And they'd be glad to always have somebody ready.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner.
Yeah.
But some things succession planning won't fix. If that pool is looking at losing money, leaving the teacher ranks to go into administration, succession planning won't fix that. So those are the challenges that we're confronting right now. And we're talking about educators. Educators in mass are very much mission-driven folks. They didn't get into this to get rich. I know I didn't, and many of my contemporaries did not. We're mission-driven, we're very passionate, but we have families, we have mortgages, we have bills, and when you start doing the math, long range, you'll hear about changes like that, but I'm more concerned about what we're doing to the state in terms of being able to, we want to be able to recruit talent and retain the talent we have, and I'm troubled by the direction that we're moving in.
There's several things can minimize that problem, and one of those is one I just mentioned. That's not all.
Yes, sir.
But that's one.
I think Mr. Sharp also had a question.
Chairman Commissioner Bellfield, I'm glad you brought that point up because I think Dr. Jeffries and his staff have done an outstanding job when it comes to training, recruiting, and executing. One of the things you know, in business, you always want to hire the best people that you can get to make your business successful. But also, you got to do something to keep that carried out in front of them, to keep them there. And just like with anything else, is as we do that, as his staff does that, what we find is there's other districts also that's pulling from those people that we've trained. It's almost like you've invested this money with your business for folks. My folks do it all the time. And once we train them in those areas, they're going to look at what's best for them and their family. And if we can't compete and we can't meet up to that need, then they're going bye-bye.
I understand that, but I still go back to what I said. That's not the total answer, what I said, but you need to constantly be prepared for these things going to happen in any system, that you're going to find some people move because their spouse has a greater opportunity somewhere, so they're going with them. We've had that to happen right within county government here this year. So I'm saying be ready. There are several options. There are several factors that you can take a look at to minimize the sting.
Any further questions or comments for Dr. Jeffries? All right, I think we're ready then to move on to item 10, Commissioner Davis.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jeffries.
Thank you.
Item 10, trying to see how to get into this one. As some of you folks know, the county has been very, very interested in getting a group of school board members and commissioners together to start working on capital improvements. In the meeting that, right, I'm working myself into that thing. I'm on the right item. But in fairness to Ms. Chairperson Wilson, she also asked me a few weeks ago, would we consider also working on current expense, having a group that worked on that as well. Certainly, that was a very valid request. My answer to it was, sure, we can sure do that. I do realize that in the past, our board has, from time to time, expressed interest in meeting as full board members and not having smaller groups working on things. I think over the last few years that our board has learned, certainly I have learned, and I think we'll all agree to this, even though I hadn't asked them, that we have a lot of charges that we have responsibility for. I certainly, as chairman, can't go to all the things that we have under our privy. We've had to break up our responsibilities. We can't do everything as a full board. Sometimes we were doing that, ladies, I love you to death, but we were doing that because sometimes we think we can get more done when we're outside of the public eye. Our board has moved beyond that because y'all's board didn't necessarily agree with the way we felt like what the law said, open meetings law. So we're fine with the open meeting part of it. But for instance, I'll take Ms. Barnes as an example. She has the responsibility of serving on the mental health board and our hospital board. Believe me, that's all she can do. I mean, she's worked to death, quite frankly, because they meet a lot, and it is intense, it is very complicated stuff, and it's not fair for our board to ask her to do anything else. Each one of us has certain things that we are assigned to. Mr. Combs is on our health board. It takes a lot of his time to serve on the health board because we have a consolidated board now that includes social services as well as our health board that I've always known as a health board. So we now have broke it up into parts. When I became chairman, Mr. Outlaw became vice chairman. In the past, our vice chairman really hadn't had any added responsibilities, but I could see very quickly that I had to break down and ask Mr. Outlaw to tend to some of the things that we do. He's responsible for our second meeting each month. And so we just have to break things down. What we are asking y'all to do is to consider on these two items, current expense as well as capital improvements, to form a work group that we can meet monthly if we need to, and we may well need to do that, but you got to have a commitment to do that, and certainly we can only have 3 people there without it being a big advertised and everything else. It's going to be an open meeting. We're beyond the point, and certainly the press can be there. But I've gotten, I'll just say me personally, because I've gotten pretty frustrated because we hadn't got that started. I've been asking for about a year. I don't know what the real problem is. I'm hoping by us agreeing that if we can do them both, that we can tonight agree to move forward with it. Current expenses on the agenda first is item 10, simply because it's probably more important to y'all than capital is. It appears to be. But, and we're gonna have 3 people on there. It's gonna be myself, Mr. Outlaw, Mr. Belfield. Our board has determined that because we've used that mix of commissioners on numerous things we do. If y'all wanna have 4, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Y'all can have more than we can have and it not constitute a quorum. I've also, Ms. Wilson shared with me Monday when we met about the agenda that there was some concern about Edgecombe County having a representative there on the Capitol particularly. I'm fine with that. What I offered to her to do is I'll contact, if that's important to you. I didn't think about that, and I'm not sure how important it is, but if it's important, I'll be glad to contact their chairman and tell him if we are indeed going to move forward with something like this, that we're going to do this, would you be willing to have one of your commissioners or yourself be present? Do you have an interest in being present? I can only ask. I don't know what kind of response I'll get, but I'll certainly ask that question. Because indeed they have a stake in what the cost is going to be and whatever we do on current expense as well as on capital. Their current expense is going to go up pretty significantly in 2 more years, as we all know. So it's a fair question to ask, shouldn't they be there? But what I'd like to do, if we could, is agree tonight that we're going to do that, get it started, and have one group working on current expense. And I say current expense and teacher supplement, because I'll be honest with you, I know our board and how we feel about it. We have a better comfort level with teacher supplements than we just do just the word current expense. But that's something we need to work on. Y'all can make and change our mind. If it's not teacher supplements, most of us feel that once we do teacher supplements like we did before, we know exactly where this money is going. Our passion is to try to help the teachers, keep the best teachers we got, try to reduce that third that the superintendent pointed out that we're either working out of field or a 1 through 3 third-year teacher, and get our pay up as high as we can get it. I don't know how we'll do that, whether before we did it as a joint effort, we shared it. I'm beginning to hear that y'all don't have anything to share. If that's the case, we'll find that out as we work through it. So that's my request on that item, as well as item 12, as meeting twice a year is not going to resolve this. We've got to meet much more frequently that to stay on track. Ms. Wilson, do you want to talk about the current expense part of it some?
Yeah, and if I may, absolutely. I mean, we had a recent discussion at our November board meeting that on current expense, and that clearly as we talk is what is the issue most at forefront with us, because we're looking at classroom sizes and we're looking at fewer teachers in the classrooms, and it's a concern for us. We're looking at literacy challenges. And so that is definitely, I think, the issue that is weighing most heavily on us. So my thought in approaching Commissioner Davis a couple of weeks ago about this was, given that that's really the issue that is weighing on us the most, that maybe it would be beneficial to have kind of two committees going in tandem, with perhaps that our board may choose to do separate representation in part so that more of our board can be at the table for these discussions. I have taken the opportunity over the past week to canvass our board about their interest in exploring this. I kind of came to you to see if that's something that that you all would consider. And then, you know, saying to you, I needed to check into and see where my board is. I would say overwhelmingly the board is in support of exploring some type of work group for both. We have not yet had an opportunity to talk about it collectively. And I think there were a few members on the board that felt like it would be beneficial to do so, unless tonight you tell me otherwise. In terms of kind of how to hash out our representation, those type of details we can do in the future. I guess I can turn it to my board. Two other things I want to say is one of the points I think that concern was expressed on was making sure that Edgecombe is at the table, and I appreciate your overture in addressing that issue. I think the other broad concern that a few members expressed is, you know, that we are an autonomous organization. We're an autonomous board with the mission and to set the vision of public education in the Nash Rocky Mount districts. And, you know, Mr. Lamb touched on the kind of unusual funding stream and the unusual relationships that you have with the structure that we have when we don't have independent taxing authority and we come to you for local funding, and yet we're really, unlike your other departments, we're not a department, we're an independent agency. So one of the things that I think is weighing on our board a little bit is how to find that balance between you are a local funding source without opening the door to basically micromanagement. And I've talked to several commissioners at different points who have said, we don't want to micromanage you. Your expertise is education, it's not ours. But I think that developing those ongoing conversations, communication, and developing relationships will develop that trust and help us find that kind of happy medium so that we're talking about these issues, we're being open and transparent and back and forth and sharing our perspectives without feeling like we're being encroached upon or being micromanaged. So I think that is weighing on several board members on we've got to find that balance for this to work. I think we're open to doing it overall, but that balance is important. I guess I'd go to my board at this point. Is this something that you all would like to discuss on Monday night? Ms. Chavis.
I think it would be very beneficial. I think as you're absolutely right as a whole, I think we are to the consensus that it would be very valuable to have more communication. But we need to talk to each other a little bit too and hash out how we feel about it. And if you give us a little more time, I think Monday night would probably be a good time that we could sit down together as our board to outline. One thing I can't help from adding though, Mr. Davis, is I appreciate your sincere gesture to reach across the line and call Edgecombe, but I think our board chair might be a little bit better, because just to be that person in the middle.
And I'm certainly happy to do that.
I would confer with Ms.
Well, I think what we need to do there, if we can address it, she needs to call her counterpart, and I need to call my counterpart.
And that's exactly what I was
fine.
saying. Yeah, because, and that's exactly what I was going to say, Mr. Davis, basically, because I agree with Ms. Davis that we haven't had this dialogue. I had this conversation with my board chair yesterday. I don't do anything without thinking about it, praying through it, and actually having converse with the entire board. So
I'm not asking for a decision.
right.
Okay.
So, but I think it's a great idea to have the concept.
Sometime pretty soon to tell us yay or nay, one or the other.
Right here.
And I think we feel comfortable with allowing for discussion Monday night. I'll call you Tuesday.
I have a question. I'm assuming the current expense teacher supplement work group would be preparing us for the next budget cycle.
That's correct.
Okay. Whereas the capital improvement would be ongoing, wouldn't have any time period.
That is
I think
correct.
it needs to be a continuous thing,
And I would,
year in, year out.
yeah, and I would believe the work groups, as they get going, can really determine how frequently they need to meet based on the issues that are before them.
On the current expense, I think it'd be good for a group of commissioners to get with a group of your board members so y'all can inform them instead of just coming to them one time
Right.
in April and saying, we want this money. If you've been working with them, explaining them, indoctrinating them on your needs, I think that would make that transition to budget time a lot better.
And rather than keep those, excuse me, go ahead.
I think the idea of having the meeting scheduled for April is a wonderful idea. And even having the subgroups, I think, are wonderful. Good ideas. However, I think personally that to have the initial meeting with both boards would be the best interest from where I sit. I just think having all of us together to be able to look at everything as both boards, and then perhaps later on look at going into two separate teams would probably work. I just think initially to have everybody at the table to get the opportunity to hear what everybody has to say, I think that would probably be what I would be interested in doing from that perspective. That's just my take.
I think that's an item for y'all to discuss.
Yeah, but I just want to
Probably.
mention to you
Understand.
why we're sitting here tonight. Yeah.
Rather than keep 10, or excuse me, item 10 and item 12 as two separate items, Chairperson Wilson, if I can, I'm just going to address 12 right quickly.
Please do,
Because
yeah.
they're almost the same item. Now, on the capital improvements, as you know, we have been requesting for a while to get to work on that. And it is more important to the commissioners, the capital improvement side of it, simply because that's what we know we are charged with irregardless. That's where our big dollars are gonna go. So certainly we may have a little more interest in that than what y'all may have. Y'all may have more interest in current expense than we have. That's why if we can tag team and get them both started, I think it's very important. I've said to a few of you as we were meeting in certain meetings, our capital improvement plan for the county, long-range capital improvement plan, we update every year, and it has a 5 and a 10-year plan initiated into it. We know that next coming up, when we finish this courthouse, it's going to be y'all's turn to get the next capital improvement if we are ready. If we are not ready, we've got a sincere need for a new health department. If any of you want to come and visit our health department, we'd be delighted to have you walk through it. But we understand that we've got to flip-flop. We've done a lot for our county buildings over the last 10 years, but we're not through. We won't ever be through, probably. But the health department is going to be a major expense, and it's a way we may be able to mitigate that quite a bit. We don't know yet. We're working on that, but that's where we're going next. But this high school in the this elementary school in the northern part of the county that y'all have identified as y'all's next major project, and early college, I think, is a done deal. We know we're going to do that. But the next one, we should have been working on that a year ago. And certainly, we can't be sitting here in April, and sure can't be sitting here next October and still be talking about this. Whatever we got to do, I understand your sensitivity issues, but they've been there a long time. And so I just, on behalf of myself, and I don't think my other board members mind, if I just beg you to let's get this one moving. We had an opportunity that popped up as a potential very large funding thing. We didn't get the first round. We probably knew we wouldn't get the first round because we knew who funded that bill. We knew what was in mind, and we could almost tell you where the money was going. Mr. Lamb told me where the money was going. I told him he didn't know what he was talking about, but as it turns out, I knew he was right when he said it. I just wasn't going to agree with him at the time. But there's another round coming very soon, and when that money's gone, our association is gonna keep enough heat on the legislators that they gonna spend more money on capital out of that lottery fund. Are you not, Mr. Bellfield? It's the first priority we got every year.
Been working on it every year since it changed.
We have, and we're not gonna stop. So we're gonna keep getting opportunities, but I hope y'all had the opportunity to read why the counties that got that money got the money, because they had a shovel-ready project sitting there. We don't have a shelf-ready project sitting there. But if it's that funding source or another funding source, it's always driven by shovel-ready project. We were very fortunate to get a huge block of money in our water system recently, $10 million. A lot of it grants, a lot of it interest, and some of it almost no interest. But it was only because we were one of the few areas in the state that had that project far enough along that it was sitting there and we could put it under contract within a 12-month period that we got that money. The same thing is going to be true for this school also. So, and the part that y'all not going to like that I'm going to say, we don't want to be in your business, but we are convinced that we can help you build a school at a lesser price if you just let us help you. We're not going to dictate anything. We've got experience on our board by projects that we have done that we have been able to save a tremendous amount of money by what our original estimates were. So if you'll just allow us to start this process and let's work together on it and go in it together rather than that battle we had on that high school, we don't need that again on any school. It's ridiculous. We're all trying to get to the same point. Why not get on the same bus and go there? So I just hope that we can move forward with these work groups and understand that we really want to work hand in hand on capital, but you've got to allow us to help you, and we're not trying to take your job in the capital side of it. Some counties have chosen to, Board of Commissioners have chosen to take that part of it and tend to the facilities themselves. That's not really what we want, but we do want to do it together.
Robbie, I appreciate all the information and input you just gave us.
But
And I think, no buts on this one, there's no conjunction with this one. I think we're in agreement when it comes to number 12, that Kevin approved for that, what you were talking about.
Yep.
I don't think you'll get any naysayers when it comes to that, do it right? Because that's something that we're in agreement with. And it's not about you, you just work with us, it's about us working with you. Because there are things that we can help you with as well. And so if we want to work collaboratively together, it's one hand helping the other. Like the old saying, together we stand, because we're one county, but separately we fall. So I'm not in the business, we're not in the business about falling. We want to stand because if we got something that's going for our county that we need to be viably a part of to make sure it grows and the development of our county. And it's going to start with our kids. So I think we're all in agreement with that one.
So,
any other commissioner that would like to address any comment on these work groups? All right. And we all know that in the funding bill, we have in there a 10-year moratorium that we asked for, quite frankly. We're trying to get the law done away with on state level. But in Nash County, we have a 10-year moratorium where we can't be sued by the school system for a 10-year period at least, and certainly in that 10 years, we all think that bill will be gone. But what we want to do is prove that we didn't have to have that bill. We want to be able to show that we can work together, that there's no threat of y'all suing us again in the future if we don't do X and if y'all don't do Y. I mean, it's always been one of my pet peeves to allow that to happen in any county and for two government agencies to be spending the taxpayers' money to argue with one another. We just can't go there again. Fortunately, we resolved it before very quickly. We didn't have to spend a lot of money, both sides spent a little bit of money, but we don't need to spend another dime because we can't work together. Somehow we can make it work. But Ms. Wilson, with that said, I'm going to turn it over to, I'm going to ask, I know my board pretty well, does anybody need to take a short break? Or is everybody, because the chairman does, but we don't
We're almost.
have to. Can we just take a 5-minute pause?
If we need to, that'll be fine. That'll be fine.
And let's make it very quickly, and we'll be right back. The next item that we have on the agenda, item 11, Ms. Wilson, you were going to update us on where we were on the early college. That was a question that our board had because we just haven't heard much about it since we met last. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chairperson Wilson.
Okay. And just to say, we greatly appreciate the support that we have gotten from you all on the early college to allow us to expand that program, as well as get our students and our teachers out of those trailers and into a beautifully renovated facility. So we thank you, as well as Nash Community College, for your support on that. And we'll turn it over to Mr. Davis now to provide us with an update.
Good evening. I promise to keep this brief. I want to talk a little bit about the update on the Community College Building C to the conversion. We'll be formally submitting the plans to DPI, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. We've already had some informal meeting with that as far as the floor plan. According to DPI, hopefully 30 days, we'll have approval from those guys. We're in the process now with the floor plan of getting budget numbers to see exactly what the costs will be. Construction management will be completed by Nash Rocky Mountain Public Schools. A lot of the work will be performed with our staff. The floor plan, we basically have a total of 13 classrooms, a dining room, administrative area. We're hoping to start the bidding process either March or April, hopefully to get ahead, especially the mechanical piece. We noted last year we had a lot of issues with summer work in schools, and hopefully getting a lot of the mechanical contractors on board and getting ahead of their schedules. Of course, mechanical will be our biggest expenditure, and hopefully remaining contracts will be approved shortly thereafter, and all of that will be dependent upon funding and when funding will be available. This here, it was a little hard scanning these in, but this is the existing floor plan. I just tried to do a little color coding. If you'll look, this is what the floor plan will look like once we finish. This is what I would call part of phase 1 that we're hoping to start as soon as the building is available, August, late August, September. Again, you can see the existing where the community college has quite a few office spaces. We're just taking walls down, not an awful lot of work there, with the exception of the heating and air. The next section, of course, is the purple, which is the existing cosmetology area. You can see that. We've blown that out. That will be the administrative area. All of that didn't go on, but that's roughly 10 to 12 offices in that space. The last area is the existing engineering department. That's where we'll have the dining room. It's laying in there horizontal in this slide, but you can see this is where the dining room, all of the chemistry labs. This is the biggest challenged area we have because we have the least amount of sewer and water, but this is where we need the most water and sewer. Expanding the bathrooms, all of those have to be up to code. Several code life safety issues, additional egress, things of that nature had to be addressed. Any questions?
A couple of questions. So in this planning to date, I know we have talked in the past about working with the staff from the county. in terms of some of the planning process, given, particularly I think at the community college, it seems like the nature of buildings at the community college, do you all own buildings on the community college campus that might be
County does own
distinguished
buildings.
from our normal process? Are we doing collective planning with the county, or I mean, I think that
We've gone basically with an architect outside. We have not had any meetings with the county.
And that was discussed at our last joint meeting. Unless if I'm misunderstanding, we articulated exactly why we contracted with an architect. And am I fabricating a memory, or did that happen?
I'm not getting to the architect thing. I think that there was some agreement that the plans that were in place at that point in time, that the county commissioners were comfortable with what had been done. I'm talking about, as we move forward, having some joint planning and joint input with the county commissioners. I guess I had thought that at this point in time, that our staffs were going to be working together as we move forward, that this was kind of beyond the board standpoint, and there was going to be some joint collaboration in the building process.
And I don't want to speak for Mr. Davis, but at that point, the decision point was we had the architects to give us the plans that we could submit to DPI. Once we got approval, we would be collaborating. We haven't gotten there yet, have we? I don't want to speak for you.
No, sir. We haven't submitted.
I'm trying to understand the process here. So once it is submitted and approved by DPI, then there'll be the process. I'm not a construction person, so I don't understand how all these processes work. But once it's approved from DPI, then that's when we'll start working with the county or interacting in some fashion with the county as far as moving forward on the building.
Once we have approval from DPI, we basically will have a set of construction drawings to start permitting. Once DPI approves that, yes.
Okay.
And so I guess just for a point of clarity for me, the capital work group that we've been discussing, or is this a third? Would it not be a part of that work, or how did you all envision that? And again, this is for my edification.
Sure. My understanding was, and I could be wrong, but my understanding was that the early college project was far enough along that it was more of a staff. I mean, our board at this point in time, I don't think is going to have much input in the early college project. We've approved it. Everybody's on go, and we've kind of given it to you all, so that other than very in a cursory fashion, I wouldn't think that the early college project would be much a part of that facilities committee, because there's not much to be discussed at the board level anymore, that would be more staff. That was just my understanding. Ms. Bullock.
I need something cleared up in my head, because I'm a bit confused right now. I'm not sure, Chairman Davis, as to what you are alluding to as to where the commissioners or the professionals in the county come into play. I know that with the discussion that we had early on, this board did agree that we would use the architect we had already approved. I'm not quite clear now that we're approaching the end of that process, where and what the commissioners or the professionals in the county are proposing, what their input would be in this process, so that we as a board can discuss and see where we're going from here.
And just for a point of clarification for everyone, Mr. Davis, our staff is going to be completing this work.
Correct.
Not the architectural firm, we just needed them for the designs.
We're
correct?
administering, once we get approval from DPI, we'll have a set of construction plans. We're going to bid out the mechanical. We're handling the electrical, the majority of the plumbing in-house, all the floor finishings, suspended ceiling work. Again, the mechanical piece is the biggest contract that we will be right. We'll do any of the mechanical in-house.
Ms. Wilson, at the appropriate time, I'd like to tell you where we stand on this project if I could. And I want to say before I say that, I'm going to be pretty blunt with where we are. And I don't like the word blunt. I'm just going to tell you where our board is on this project. And it's not done in a manner to upset anyone. I think I want to highlight the reason we need this work group going on over and over. When I got here tonight and I got this, and hearing my comments from the other board members, the reason I asked for an update on this is we thought the project was sitting and nothing was been done. We had made contact numerous times with our staff to your staff, when are we gonna meet and work on this project? The answer we got was, we can't meet with you until we get approval to meet with you. We got that several times, and we thought there was nothing going on. I'm amazed, astounded that I get here tonight and we've got plans ready to submit to DPI in a building that we own, and we hadn't seen anything. When we left our last meeting, Dr. Jeffries, that you're referring to, and Ms. Wilson, I don't recall, I'm not sure you were at that meeting. I don't think you were. Ms. Bullock, you may have been. I think you were there. But when we left there, we thought what was going to happen was, we did understand that y'all had already hired an architect that we didn't know anything about until we found out you had already hired him.
Right, that we paid for out of existing funds.
You did pay for out of existing funds, that's correct. You did, and you didn't have to, because if you consulted with us, you know, we could have covered that.
You're arguing a point I'm not making, sir.
Okay. But when we left there, we agreed that we knew you had the architect. We weren't looking backward, we were looking forward. Go ahead with the architect. But we also expected for our professional staff, which is our engineer, to get in touch with y'all's professional staff, which would be Mr. Davis, and you would immediately start working together to find a way to get this project done with the least amount of dollars. And also, we had an interest in being involved in this one simply because it's our building. But that's really almost irrelevant in a way. This is what we hope we can do on all buildings moving forward, would use the talent that each group has got to come up with the best way to tackle a project, capital project, provide the best facility that has the longest longevity, and do it at the least amount of expense that we can do it on. But I know we're here tonight amazed that we just got left completely out of the mix, and I almost can't help but feel it had to be intentional. Somebody might convince me it's not intentional. I don't know. Can it convince you, Mr. Outlaw? You don't need to answer that question. But you don't need to answer the question. Okay. But this is what we've got to avoid if we can, because we just feel like we're going to see this thing when it's put out to bid, and it may be something that we're just not happy with at all because of our building. And I can assure you, the way it's been done, if you need more than the money that we are allotted, you're going to kind of be on your own. Whereas if we had been working with you, and we could have realized that maybe we under budgeted a little bit, and we both worked on it as hard as we could, maybe the board would have been willing to put more money up. I don't know. I can't speak for the board. But I can assure you, we wouldn't be the way it's been done this time. But with that said, Ms. Chairperson, you look like you want to say something. I'm going to let you talk. So.
I mean, I'm struggling because the impression is that there's somehow been a departure from a previous agreement, and that's not accurate. That's not accurate at all. So.
Well, Dr. Jeffries,
it would
I
help-
would
Please allow
invite
me to
you.
finish, sir. I've been respectful to you. It would help me if I got guidance from our board exactly what the expectations were, because our last discussion was a small group meeting, and that wasn't, but I don't believe that we've engaged in a departure from what we discussed. And again, I understand perceptions can be different, but for those board members who were present, please let me know and correct me if I've misstated.
Go ahead.
I was at that meeting, and my recollection of that meeting was that we would do the work in-house.
I think we both agree on that.
So.
That's not an issue.
So I'm not sure what the issue is then, Mr. Davis.
The issue is that our two staffs were, in our mind, directed to work together from that day moving forward, and we have attempted to do that. And I'm not going to ask one of your staff people, that's not fair to your staff.
No.
Are we aware that contact was made? That's fruitless. I won't do that here.
By working together, though, I think that's what I'm waiting to hear, a definition of what you expect by your phrase, working together.
On this project, what we expected to, the day we met, that you were there, was within a couple of days after that, is for our two professional staffs to begin working on the set of plans with the architect, and input from our side on how we could do things as economical as we could, and how our building was going to be left when we finished the thing. We discussed that we could well be willing to put money in this overall air conditioning problem that you got over there. And roof, also you had a roof that you had already spent money on. We discussed that maybe we would be willing to reimburse you for that architect as well as that roof work. And that, let's get into it and start working on it and see where we are. But we hadn't heard a word from that day.
All right, well, let me ask the question, and then I'll try to step back and listen to someone else. Am I understanding then that as we move forward in this project, whatever it is that we as a school board determines that we would like to see in this college, in this building, we have to first notify you or get your input, or again, I ask, what is it? How is it that you want us to proceed? Because I'm not sure. And
any other capital project?
one other thing, you've mentioned this as your building. So I'm trying to understand where we are and what we need to be doing, and what you expect to be doing. That's where I am. I'm not clear yet. And I don't know if my fellow board members are clear either. I'm not, so I need it if nobody else needs it.
You ready for me to answer you?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you.
Okay. On this project, as well as any capital project moving forward, we want full involvement from the day we decide we're going to do the project, through the design phase, up to the bid stage, so we can help contain costs on what the commissioners are obligated to moving forward. Not to tell you how many classrooms you need, or not to tell you what they're going to look like, but to be involved so we can have a comfort level when we approve fundings that we have all worked together to do it in a way that protects our taxpayers as much as we can.
So what you're suggesting then is that as we go forward, you being
Board of Commissioners.
Your Board of Commissioners will have to approve the decisions that we as a board make as to what we think is the better project or better way to proceed on that project? Is that what I'm hearing?
If you expect the Board of Commissioners to provide funding, yes, ma'am. If you've got funding somewhere else, we don't have to be involved in it.
Well, by statute, we all know that
We do.
your board is responsible for funding, and our board is responsible for making sure that we have facilities and everything that goes along with providing a basic college, a basic education for our students. But from what I'm understanding is that it's not going to be a decision of the board, school board, but it will ultimately be a decision of the county commissioners, which I think puts the county commissioners in the position of making the final decision as to how we proceed. Otherwise, if I heard correctly, then the funding will not be
Ms. Bullock, basically what you've done.
Am I correct?
Well, I'm gonna answer you like this. What
Okay.
you're doing is taking back apart what we've accomplished in this meeting so far. What we want to do is work together.
Exactly.
And we're not gonna work together if you want to start splitting hairs on whose part this is. All we're saying is we can do a better job for our county, for our students, for our taxpayers, if we work together on capital improvements. You gotta give us a chance to try, and maybe you'll come around and understand it works. But of course, we can't make you do anything, but what we can do
is hold the money.
Is decide when we've got money to spend on your capital project or whether we want to keep doing ours. And that's not a threat. We want to build schools. We're begging you to move forward building schools. But there have been some instances in the past when we didn't get involved, when we could have saved enough money to build another school. For the most part, and I'm back to the senior high project, but that's not the only one. Certainly, you got to go in it with a cooperative effort. If you're not willing to do that, it's not going to work.
So,
That
can I speak, please? What we have hit on tonight is obviously that finding that balance in the middle, where we have you all as a funding source, and yet maintaining our autonomy and trying to figure out where we can meet in the middle together. Now, I'm not sure exactly what happened with this. I was not at that small meeting. Obviously, you all had one set of expectations that seems to have been different from the understanding of the people in this building. I want to defend our superintendent and the staff in terms of Commissioner Davis, your thought, and that there was some type of purposeful effort to avoid that. I mean, that is not something that can help us. We're going to focus on a misunderstanding. Obviously, we want to move forward with the early college. We hope that we will continue to move forward as the next project with respect to a new elementary school in the northern end. Those are things that benefit our kids, that benefit our community. I think that joint work groups, I agree with you in the first thing that you said, in that this really shows why it's important for us to be sitting down talking on a regular basis. I definitely understand the urgency of what you all said, and the feeling of we really need to move forward with the facilities work group so that we can get a shovel-ready, shelf-ready project. And then we've got to figure out how to find that happy medium in the middle, because we are doing our community and our kids, most importantly, a disservice if we are not working together. We have got to figure this out. We didn't create this odd odd structure in terms of funding. That was created by our state legislature. It's the world we live in, but our kids shouldn't be held hostage because we can't figure out how to find that happy medium down the middle. The reality is, as we go through that process, we're going to have times where we overstep, and we're going to have to back up and regroup and try to figure it out. And we owe that to our kids. We owe that to our community. So whatever happened with this at this point in time, I would hope, and I don't know, but I would hope that our board would say to you, Dr. Jeffries, and give you the clarity that your staff needs. Let's sit down and talk about it. I don't, how much direction there is by the county commissioners on facilities. Sounds like you all want a little more direction on that than you would, say, current expense. That's a global type thing. But we've got to find that happy medium. We've got to find where that is, and we've got to expect we're going to have some issues as we get there. But we have a duty to do this. We've got a duty to do this for our kids in our community, and to get past some of that. They asked questions earlier that I think made us all uncomfortable about the mobile units. But the reality is, that's part of our job as stewards. Those are hard questions for us. It's easy to sit back as armchair quarterback and go, ooh, you need to do that. And Dr. Jeffries said very correctly, we're dealing with a lot of emotion and passion. It's not just a finance and a bottom line. It's a much harder issue for us to look at the possibility of a need to talk about redistricting than it is for them to look at the bottom line. But we've got to be meeting, we've got to be talking, we've got to be willing to have these hard discussions because that's what we were elected to do. So I would hope that we can sit down in a small group, that perhaps our staff can sit down and take a look at this, and that our board would give them the ability to sit down and talk. I mean, sometimes I think we get caught up in these issues at a board level, that if you put staff in a room, they can knock it out and there's really no issues. Let Shannon Davis sit down and talk with her engineer. They're talking about the same things, and they perhaps can see really we're not talking about a whole lot of difference. What we propose may be extremely comfortable. So I apologize for being long-winded, but felt like it needed to be said. Ms. Chavis.
Here. I wanted to ask the question of Mr. Davis regarding the mechanical workings and budgeting. I think if we're putting stuff out there for bid, what would it hurt to see how inexpensively, especially if the quality is the same? And granted, there may have been toes stepped on, but if going forward, if we're looking for quality work to be done, if you bring somebody to the table that can do what we need and it's going to save us all, our taxpayers, some dollars, I'm saying let's at least listen to what's out there. So if the commissioners have people on their side that can look at some of this mechanical workings, and I don't know what that entails because I'm not an engineer, how could it hurt? Because the whole county is going to benefit if we do save a little bit of money. I do understand Evelyn's point too, because we are charged to serve the education piece. And a lot of times when you look at the structures involved, like the architect we did actually select and start with, has the experience, has done work for us before based on school building design, which, believe it or not, is a little bit different than some, just like a fire department is different than some. So you would have someone who is creative and have the know-abouts to make that meet all the state standards that it has. We knew this company could, but we've got to look at the big ball of wax. If we're going to work for these kids, we are going to have to work together. We can't wear our feelings always on our sleeve, and if we can save some money, I'm for it. However you bring it, I don't care if it's polka dot, chartreuse, whatever. If we're going to save our taxpayers, that's a big step for us as a whole, this board and that board. And if you bring it up for bid, if there's somebody that beats what you can do, still we save money. We can't lose. Just my feeling. Let's get it going.
Ms. Edge.
I just think at this point there's been some sort of miscommunication, and I regret that it was felt that it was done intentionally. Somewhere along the line, the process of how we were going to get to the bottom line of the saving money was lost. And as you said, all that we've worked towards tonight I just don't want to see that going down the drain. We just need to get back to the table, communicate what has to be done, and then let's all go forward. It has been put on the table, the misunderstanding and no one getting back, but it's easy to go back and say, well, just, that's dam over water.
That's right.
We're trying to, the river dam.
I got you.
They're all good.
I guess it needed to come out, huh? But anyway.
Work like you said. I will tell you.
Water over the dam. But anyway, if we could, you know, there's just, go back to the protocol that we want to follow for this project, and so we can see to the end. So when the ribbon cutting stand comes, we can all stand there and be proud.
Well, and that's the whole point. If we can work together on the thing, the last thing our board ever wants to do, and our board was split 4-3 on building a high school. There's no reason that should have happened. And quite frankly, I was very uneasy as some of our other board members. I've been over there to the high school some, but I've never felt good about going over there because I personally know we spent enough money there that we didn't need to spend to build another elementary school. That's where we think we can help you, but are we going to tell you what you got to do? Absolutely not. It's just like when I go home and me and my wife got a dispute. We don't stay mad with one another. We work it out, and we agree on something. That's what we want to do here. But we're just convinced we can help you on the capital side, not tell you what color the school's going to be, what it's going to look like, or anything else. But we've got proven methods that we've utilized in our own capital project program that there are ways to save a whole lot of money, and that's just what we want to do. So we can not build you only one school, but maybe 2 schools, or whatever it is. Dr. Jeffries, you spoke very highly of your Mr. Davis, and I agree with everything you said. I don't know him well, but I've worked with him quite a bit. We've got an engineer at the county that whatever adjectives you use to describe him, I'd like to borrow him and describe our man as well. Because he is one of the best in the country, quite frankly. And I promise you, your staff won't find him near as adverse as I can be at times. He is a great communicator. He's very level-headed. He is very smart. And 2 heads on a project are always better than one. But what you're going to get out of it is, if you let us be involved somewhat, you're going to get a board of commissioners that feel comfortable that we've had some buy-in, and we don't mind spending that $20 million if that's what it is, or whatever the project is.
So step 1 here, for those 2 very smart people to get together, your engineer and our people, those 2 departments, would that be
That's
number
what
1
we
step?
have been trying to do for quite a while.
Okay, that's what we're trying to
on
do.
this project.
Is that number 1?
That's number 1, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And as Ms. Wilson said, it wasn't, this is not a complicated project. It's not a matter of the 2 boards needing to get in it too much. If you just let the staff work together and keep the 2 boards informed, this one will run very smoothly. Mr. Belfield?
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm not disturbed of where they are at this point, but I do believe, as the board believe, that we can help you save some money. And I think let's just forget about all the comments that have been made, and from this point, after you get the approval, let's move forward working together, and possibly can save some money.
Yeah, that's true, absolutely, Ms. Wilson. I agree with you.
Do we, just for clarity, do I have the support of our board to give direction to Dr. Jeffries to have the engineer and Mr. Davis sit down and take a look at this project and plan together?
That's y'all,
See,
Mr.
enough-
Davis, not just Mr. Davis.
Yes, sorry. Mr. Shannon Davis. Great.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
When I came into this meeting tonight, I felt really good. I had a conversation with our chairperson about these work groups. And I felt really good because we haven't done this before. And knowing where we were until we got to this item 11, I felt even better. I felt like that we sit down together and work these things through. This conversation that existed over the last 15 or 20 minutes is a prime example of why we need to have these work groups. A prime example, because we as a group, total group, can establish our ground rules and work together to avoid the miscommunication that existed. Because I am convinced that this was purely, Robbie, purely miscommunication. And we didn't do, it wasn't done intentionally by anybody. Because I've worked with these folks, and I know this. But I'm really encouraged and feel positive about where we are in this process. And I know it's going to make a difference. And don't like to dwell on the past, but if we had this type of approach, some of the things that were discussed in the past, and you mentioned the high school several times tonight, I think we would have been able to avoid some of that.
Absolutely.
And it never happened, okay? So we don't want to talk about it. We want to move forward. We want to move forward in the future and try to make this better. I really feel good about it. The team approach. I'm a coach. I'm an old coach. We got to be a team. And there's seven of y'all and 11 of us. And we got to work through it. And you got two managers sitting right next to each other, arm in arm. You know, that's what we got to do. We got to do it, man, for the kids.
Mr. Land.
I'd just like to know how much money has been spent on this project so far?
The money that's been spent on the project is for the designs from the architects and what we contributed to the roof. What's that total? 10 to 12,000. What we're waiting on is approval.
That was on the roof, right?
And that was out of our cost. Yes, sir.
How about on architect?
But remember, we didn't shut the door on reimbursing you for that, Dr. Jeffers, that day we met. I bet you remember that part of it very well.
I'm not convinced of anything that we talked about that day, sir.
I just would like to, Mayor, you know, I just sit here tonight and just watched us, and I want to feel like all the accolades and all the good positive things that I was hearing coming from both sides of the aisle was genuine. But when we end up at a place like this, when we have meetings, it makes me almost want to doubt, do we really mean what we say? And I hate to say that, but I just believe in being honest. I mean, I watch people get up and be very political, trying to be political correct, all those kinds of things. And then when it comes down to miscommunication, tension in the room, all those kinds of things, it really leaves me thinking, have we really grown from where we were? Or do we really want to grow? Or does both sides really trust each other? I mean, what is the issue? I don't want to leave feeling uncomfortable, but I feel like there's this spirit that comes in here and just once again sets division, and I find that we're almost back to where we were. And I don't know if it's all a misunderstanding, if it's a power play, is it a control issue? It leaves me very uncomfortable. And I don't like what I feel when I come to meetings like this and we all get up, most of us, and we celebrate all the other stuff we do, and I'm like, really? And then we get here and there's this tension that sets in the room, and we're never able to really move and make what I call substantial progress, because we're really just a little further than where we were last year.
I appreciate your putting that on the table, Reggie. I think that is a piece that we have to get through. I think probably a lot of it is mistrust that has stemmed from past issues that come back up and that we have to work through. I again think it's all the more reason that we need to try to meet more regularly and try to establish and work through some of those issues. Old wounds, what's that? I can't come up with the right thing. Is it old? What? I won't even try. But anyway, when you've got a past that has been as tumultuous in some ways as ours has, those wounds are still fresh in a lot of ways. And I think that they're going to come and they're going to rear their ugly heads at different points. And I think that's what happened in this past discussion. And I think you've given us kind of a challenge and a charge, and I appreciate that. to really be open and honest about that, and to make sure that this is not something that is disingenuous, that we really are here for kids. So I appreciate your stating that. I think that it's a fair perspective to see when we get to that kind of point. And we just have to continue to charge forward and hope that as we do, we'll learn more about each other, get through some of the trust issues, and have that happen fewer and fewer times. Bill?
Thank you, my brother. But I just like to comment on something that Ms. Lisa Vaughn said at the very offset. She invoked the presence of God in this room.
Amen.
She did that, Lord. And I applaud that. And as my brother and my sisters talked about, are we actually doing that? So thank you, Lisa. At least you invoked it.
The devil got it.
Can I just make one brief comment?
Sure.
I believe that these discussions help us move forward. And if that's what it takes for us to move forward, then I'm like Wayne. I think we've made great progress tonight just simply by the fact that we have had this discussion. And I think we all agree that if you've got, I use my Ruerton Club as an example. We've got 50 members in our Ruerton Club. We don't go to our Ruerton Club with a proposal or a recommendation that we haven't worked through in a small group. Because when we go to our club, those 50 people ask a lot of questions. And if you work through those questions, most of them you'll work through in a small group. Then when you go to that meeting, you're prepared to answer those questions. So just simply the fact that it looks like we've agreed that the small groups might help us with current expense and capital, I think that is a significant stride forward tonight. And I'm encouraged by that. And I just hope we'll just continue to not be hesitant, be bold, be courageous, speak up, say what's on your mind, say it respectfully, say it in a professional way, but don't be scared to say what's on your mind. And don't be so thin-skinned that you take offense to someone speaking their piece in a professional, respectful way. We can all agree to disagree and still walk out of here with a good working relationship. So let's try to do that. I think that's what Mr. Davis is saying. We just want to work together to try to do what we can, the best we can, for the citizens of Nash County.
For the children of Nash County. Ms. Fuller. I just want to say that I have to leave, but I did not want to leave. I had said to my chair 30 minutes ago, I have to go. I had a 7:30 appointment, and then at 8 o'clock, I got a text that said, be here in 30 minutes. And I'm way late, but I couldn't leave without first saying that what I say and what I do it for the betterment of the children of this district. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's not about either board, it's not about Dr. Jeffries, it's not about anything except doing what I feel is best for the children. I only have one vote, and I have to sleep with me at night. So therefore, I don't want to waste my one vote. If I have offended anybody, that was not my intention. My intention was to ask questions, get information, so that when I do speak and when I do make a decision, I make that decision based on the information that I have at hand. And so I say good night to each of you. I wish I could stay to the end of this, but do have a good evening.
We already have, and it's going to continue to be good. Good night.
I'm sorry.
Good night.
Good night. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, I think.
Chairperson?
All right, so number 13, at this point, Dr. Jeffries is, oh, yes, thank you. So Dr. Jeffries, I mean, we are all pleased. We know that you are as well, and we much appreciate your assistance in the joint meeting that we had about the innovative school district and the resolution that we entered into jointly opposing it. And we certainly celebrate the fact that we were not recommended, but the hard work now continues, and Dr. Jeffries is going to provide an update for you all about what is going on this year at Williford and kind of a timeline for the future.
Chairperson Wilson, I'd just like to add to what you said. I can't help but think the fact that we very quickly got together and worked on that. And y'all don't know all the things that we did, and we don't know what y'all did. But we worked very hard in public, but a lot in the back room, trying to help keep Williford School off of that list. And together we were able to do that. That's the kind of thing that we can do if we'll just keep working together.
Right, thank you. Just go ahead, sir.
Would like to open with reminding both bodies of the timeline as it relates to the ISD legislation and specifically its impact to the work of our district, and namely Williford Elementary. On September 7th, the ISD, and that's the Innovative School District, released the names of 48 qualifying schools in the state. And those schools were bottom 5% in terms of student achievement and performance. On that same day, September 7th, our Board of Ed convened a meeting, a formal meeting, and had our attorneys from Arrington Smith engage in a legal review where they unpacked all of the expectations for a district if it is selected by the ISD. September 18th, there was a community meeting in South Rocky Mount at the South Rocky Mount Community Center. On September 26th, the ISD superintendent, Dr. Hall, visited our district and walked the school along with myself and the building principal. That visit was about a 2.5-hour visit in totality. On September 27th, there was another community leaders meeting, and it was also at the South Rocky Mount Community Center. September 28th, there was a Williford community meeting, which I was in attendance for all of these. On October 2nd, we had a Board of Education work session where the ISD superintendent was in attendance, and our full board posed the questions and the concerns that they had about the construction of the ISD legislation. And the fundamental concern was the absence of our local board in terms of the decision-making process, any access for review. There is no redress for local boards if they have a disagreement or if there is not a significant improvement in student achievement. Shortly after, October 16th, the ISD superintendent had a presentation scheduled where he presented to the State Board of Education, and that was December 7th after the CMOs, and that's CMO and EMO, Educational Management Organization or Charter Management Organization. And he made the final recommendation after they culled the list down to 4 schools for consideration. Williford was among those 4 schools. Once he reached the final recommendation, Williford was not selected. The immediate response from our community, from leadership, was a visceral response. It was, in my perspective, a need to fight for our school. And I was encouraged by the overwhelming support. The challenge for me as a leader is leadership has to be an intentional enterprise. For our school system, we start setting a navigational course at the board retreat in the summer. That's followed up by a leadership retreat where all assistant principals, all directors participate in very intentional professional development, and they in turn engage in a week of training to their individual staffs. At no point in time were we anticipating having to dedicate the volume of time, man-hours, and advocacy in fighting this initiative. So the potential for it to be a derailer is enormous. The fortunate thing for our district is we recently added very talented leaders to our cabinet team. We have a new chief academic officer. We have a new assistant superintendent for student innovation, for student intervention and placement. And I attribute the talent of these professionals with really helping to keep our district focused on the plan that we had articulated that we were going to pursue for this year. And that is essential to making sure that you can navigate a turnaround. Our process for the district is sixfold. Every school has to have a comprehensive needs assessment. We have an internal review process where cabinet members, principals, directors spend a day reviewing instructional delivery throughout the school in every classroom in the school. They finish up with a diagnostic and a report to the leadership about expectations on improvements. Our school improvement planning process is very intentional, and again, it's designed to be an ongoing enterprise. The professional development, we've retooled based on the most current data. The challenge with the student achievement data is it's very much an autopsy. It's not ongoing data. That's how our students performed last year. So in this current year, we have to make the best adjustments that we have in terms of being able to maximize on student achievement. So professional development is key. We focus intently on coaching, and that helps with succession planning, as the commissioner mentioned earlier. We have instructional coaching that's embedded in the school to help teachers with practice on a daily basis in the form of literacy coaches at the elementary and middle schools, and we have curricular support in high school. We have school leadership coaching. We have recruited some of the best performing principals in the history of our district to come back and help groom a new cohort of leaders. And lastly, we have district level leadership. We have cabinet participation in national training and local training initiated by state agencies, as well as locally the academies for our assistant principals and our district support leaders. That has been the ongoing focus. We spent considerable time making sure that we could make changes to how we support schools like Williford. The coaches and the instructional training offered will help us to increase teacher quality. The common instructional framework, and that's a series of expectations that have to happen in every class, every day, to make sure that we're delivering the highest quality instruction every day to every student. Focusing on being data-driven as it relates to our decisions and being data-informed. If a practice is not bearing fruit, we have to discard it and replace it with a research-based alternative. Making sure that we use our PLCs, our professional learning communities, so that teachers are discussing on a regular basis the practices that they are being successful with, as well as the practices that they are not bearing fruit, and how their peers can help them improve, along with the administration, along with coaches. And lastly, what we've benefited most from is the community engagement. We've reconvened the Parent Advisory Council. This board, the county commissioners, were very supportive in terms of their commitment to making sure that Williford stayed under the auspices of our Board of Education. I'm very appreciative of that level of support. But what I want to remind this body of is the work at Williford did not get easier as a result of this. And in my honest estimation, you never get off a list like that 48 or that 4. We had challenges with recruiting professionals before, and it only gets worse and more challenging. But I am convinced that with the district level leadership, the principal and assistant principal we have in place, we are going to make the improvements we need so that we're not revisiting this process in the future. I'll open to any questions you may have.
In this professional development, Are you also including substitute teachers? Because it's a challenge. You said every day you expect you be moving forward. Do you see the need for professional development? I'm talking about beyond orientation. I know they get orientation, but what about professional development? That's the way I see it, personally, I do. That
So the question was the involvement and our commitment to substitute teachers.
Yeah.
And I have to quantify that because we have long-term substitutes in hard-to-staff positions. So they are absolutely embedded in the school-level professional development. Beyond the orientation, we have regular check-ins with our substitutes. We also check on the quality of the principal's satisfaction, the teacher who they supported satisfaction with their performance, and we're constantly refining that list. If we have substitutes that we feel are underperformers and not meeting students' needs, we remove them from consideration. Any other questions?
Dr. Jeffries, I know this last time, and you explained it to me, and we had a way for which we could have stayed off the list, but we didn't stay off the list. We didn't do whatever that was by choice, I guess. Moving in, you know, a year's going to go by very quickly. Is there any mechanism by where we can automatically stay off the list if we were to do X, Y, and Z, or is that a one-time last year and not there again?
So the way the legislation is structured, if you're selected, they can't come back again. So we weren't selected. We went to the final cut. We weren't selected, so they could very easily select Williford again. The options of avoiding consideration are increasing student achievement.
Mm-hmm.
There are also the options of pursuing a transformation or a school application where we are going to do something significantly different, and that's an application process through DPI. And at this point in time, I've already been engaged with DPI so that all of our options are on the table.
Okay. I really didn't know what I was asking, to be honest with you, but I guess.
I think it was the essence of that application because some schools were removed from consideration because they had recently been approved for a transformation model or a restart model.
Right. The restart is the word
Yes,
I
sir.
remember.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. So is there a way to take
That
advantage
is-
of a restart model again?
That is still up for consideration.
It is,
All
okay.
options are on the table.
Okay, okay. Do you have, in your dealings with this, have any feel for how many may move in that direction, how many schools next year, or is that just a complete unknown?
What I can tell you is the trend is the statewide trend. We moved from, I think, 12 to 92 restarts within about a 2-year period. So I expect that trend to continue to increase. The belief from me, and it's a philosophical belief that I share with my colleagues on cabinet, it should not be a transformation on paper, it should be a transformation indeed. The children that we're talking about, the lives that we're talking about impacting, it needs to be something of quality, something of substance, and it needs to be, I think it has a couple of elements. There's a national partner involved to help you with the professional development piece. There's something significantly different about the construct of the school. There are additional supports that the district provides to those schools that we're saying are restart or transformation models that look distinctly different when you lay them beside their schools, their sister schools. Absent those three things, I think it's just folks exercising what they perceive as a loophole. My integrity doesn't lend me to try to do something on paper. I'm committed to actually transforming the schools that require that. We're pursuing district transformation, but we're going to have to do something significantly different to support the families and students at Williford as well.
I know this year they ended up just taking one.
Yes, sir.
And I think there might have been somewhat of an agreement worked out that the one that did take kind of bowed down and let them take them, or chose to be taken, or something from what I read. How many do you think they would take the second year? 'Cause
The
they
law
were in
requires that they get to 5.
that they get to 5.
Yes, sir.
That's the answer I was looking. Is that a 2-year period? Or
In
does-
2 years, they have to
They
be
have to get to
at a minimum of 5 schools.
So they're gonna be 4 next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I was searching.
Unless there's an adjustment to the legislation.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir.
Quite well.
And I think, oh, go ahead, Commissioner Rocco.
The community over there in that school district, Wilford, a lot of them are interested in doing volunteer work, because I know I told them, because they talked with me about it, I told them that you have to go through a process. You know, you're working with kids, and you don't want to get the wrong people in there that may violate the, well, I almost said code, but that's not the word. In other words, I let them know that they need to be approved, and that they have no criminal records and all other things. They're not molesters, and you just don't walk in and say, I want to volunteer. I let them know that.
That's accurate. We screen 100% of our volunteers, and it's a database that we maintain on a regular basis. So that's the first step. They would have to be approved. The second step is, first, we appreciate the level of advocacy, and that's been led by Senator Angela Bryant, as well as Councilwoman Watkins, Lois Watkins. They've been very involved in that, and I've connected them with the school principal. So he's given them the areas where they need volunteers to support the school's effort the best. But we really want to capitalize on how to best target this community involvement. So we're working with some sister agencies to work on making sure that it's sustainable over a period of time, so that it's not perceived as an event in a reactionary nature because of the ISD. We feel that the community does have a vested interest in helping us to do this work.
Yeah, and I would suggest questions that they ask me, and I suggest that keep the communication going, because some of them still don't know what's going on. Ask me what's going to happen in Wilford School next year. Told them I don't know, it depends on the improvement.
Yeah, I don't think any of us can forecast that. Absent a crystal ball, we won't know until we get there.
We're gonna stay off on the list next year too.
That's our commitment.
Yes, sir.
Our commitment is to all of our schools.
It's to all schools. You're correct.
And that, if I may, are there other schools that, in our system, that could get on that list next year?
We're a low-performing district, so yes, there are quite a few.
So is it based, but it's based on the individual schools?
It's based on individual school performance. You become a low-performing district when 50% or more of your schools don't meet the designation for growth.
Right.
So 50% or more of our schools are in that classification that, depending on performance, could be up for consideration. That's our elementary schools.
I would just say in that vein, and when people have talked to me about volunteering, and my church has gone out and been very well received to volunteer at Williford, and one of the things that I like is the principal has been very purposeful in trying to place people where they can really help, and went through an orientation with all of the group that was supposed to come in and volunteer. They're going to tutor, went through an orientation to really explain the dynamic that's gone on at that school. Dr. Jeffries talked about, I don't know if you used the term, the kind of the scarlet letter today or not, but truly that's what happened, and it's impacted the psyche of the staff at that school. So I think they're being extremely purposeful. One thing that I see is the interest in the community being involved, but in the same vein of what we just said, the involvement needs to happen in all of our schools.
Right.
What happened with Williford was, the perfect storm that Wayne referred to earlier. That's what happened with Williford this year. But we need community involvement in all of our schools. We need that same type of excitement, that same type of focus to help all of our schools. So that's something that I think we as a board will be working on, how to further develop that, how to further reach out to the community. Some people want to help, but they don't know how they can help. And I think that we have identified that. That was one thing that Dr. Hall talked to us about. And I think part of the reason, and yeah, there was a lot happening behind the scenes, but I think what Dr. Jeffries said he talked to Cabinet about this is not just, if we were to go with one of these DPI models, it's not just about going through a loophole. It's about finding something purposeful that can really impact our kids. And I think Dr. Hall heard us loudly and clearly that that's what we expect. But that also, a piece of that is also the community and getting the community more involved. And that was one question he also had for us, is that is a key to turning around schools. So that is something that our board, I think, is committed to working very diligently on as well, to try to help.
Any other questions?
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Jeffries.
All right, we're down to 14, which just simply says open discussion. I thought we would be doing this maybe about 8:15 or 8 o'clock even. See, we probably all probably heard all the discussion we want to hear, but certainly we'd open it up. And Ms. Richardson, I always have to call on you to get you to make any comment, anything you'd like to add tonight. And I know you're looking at me hard, but anything that you would like to say, because I haven't heard you say one word.
I think a whole lot been said, and I think we all have learned something from this. Because what I'm hearing, we just not communicating. Use your side. We are not communicating to the point that we can get an understanding of what we need to do to make our county grow and be strong. And it's not about you not doing what I want to do. That's not what I want. No, let's come together and talk about it. And okay, I'll give up some of mine, you give up some of yours. Bottom line is keeping our school functioning to take care of our children. That is our main reason for being here. So with that said, I'm just hoping that all this that was said in the last, almost 3 hours, it should have been said in one, and we're going home doing what we're supposed to do. And that goes to you first. So, but anyway, let's keep working together, because it's not about us, it's about our children and making things better. Because if you stop and think about what our foreparents went through to get and support us to get us to where we are today, I would say we should be ashamed of what we're doing right now, because we are not following their pattern. So let's get our minds and our hearts right and do what's right for the children. Thank you.
Anybody else have?
Yeah. Oh, I just want to bring up a concern that I have in connection with the Spalding School, that all this bidding back and forth, and this person got a firm out of Wyoming bidding for him because he don't want you to know who he is. But I like this idea, throwing out to you this idea of, can't you pull that property back and split it up and have the campus there where the Spalding alumni maybe can get that, and then the rest of the property can go to whoever.
I thought they moved back out of the building, so Brenda said.
So what?
They'll not have a hobby.
Well, no, well, what they told me last week, it's still bidding.
About what we're going to see.
Yeah, they're still bidding on it.
All right, anything else?
I believe you can do that.
What I will respond to you is there was an article in the Spring Hope Enterprise a couple of weeks ago that apparently the town of Spring Hope voted to approach us about stopping the process. We have not yet heard from the town, which would require our vote and our agreement. We have not yet heard anything from the town of Spring Hope. I think they're meeting with their attorney. We'll be hearing from our attorney about that, and then we will have to look at it and study it and determine what we are to do and what our options would be.
Seemed like to me it'd be the right thing to do if you could do it that way. If you could do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the law requires us to find a way to determine fair market value. We can't give it away, but to find a way to determine fair market value, we went with the bidding process as opposed to an appraisal process a long time ago, really thinking that it would benefit those who wanted it, not anticipating 16 rounds. Wow. So, you know, it sounds like the town of Spring Hope's lawyer, Mr. Edwards, back there will be contacting our attorney, and we will move forward as that occurs and see what we need to do.
16 rounds, that's exactly why I'm saying maybe if you could split it up. Campus.
Understood.
I can't figure out why this person wanted you
We done with
I believe any of our board have any other comments? I think there is no desire for open discussion.
One last question. Is it all right with you if I ask Mr. Lamb to contact Dr. Jeffries tomorrow, possibly on Monday, and work out so these two professionals on our staff can at least meet and catch us up on the early college? I'd just rather let's get in it. Can I just have him contact him?
I'll actually be out of office tomorrow. Mr. Miller will be the best contact. He's his direct supervisor. Mr. Miller, you want to talk?
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely. I'm pleased to see, and I note our board, the proposed meeting dates for next year.
Well, I just thought we have so much trouble getting it scheduled. A lot of the people that we deal with like for you to tell them something as soon as you know it. We're just proposing those two dates. If we could stick them on a calendar, if we need to change it, we certainly can, but it just gives you the time period that we like to do it in. Did you need to say something about that, Mr. Lane?
Yeah, on the April 12th meeting, the way we've done it in recent years is y'all present us a preliminary budget request. I know by law you're not required to formally submit it, or you're required to formally submit it no later than the 15th of May. But if this date's too early to even do a informal request, just giving us an idea so we can pencil in a number in our budget. I present my budget to the board the first week in May. And I know y'all get your budget the first week in May, but if we meet on the 12th, if there's just some kind of number that we can.
Y'all just look at those dates.
Yeah, we'll
when
take a
they-
look at these dates, have Dr. Jeffries and the Chief Financial Officer, because
But if we could go ahead and set them pretty early, I think it
Right.
would help us all.
Absolutely. Mr. Sharp.
No, all I'm saying is, if that chief and that chief get together, we don't have to go through all these discussions, because they can actually talk to a different board as far as when we get together. You don't need all this discussion. We can sign, seal the deal, and go home.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
There being a motion and a second to adjourn the board meeting, this joint board meeting on behalf of the Nash Rocky Mountain School Board. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
And to entertain a motion to close the Board of Commissioners meeting. Who said so moved? Ms. Richardson, and a second by Ms. Barnes. All in favor say aye. Any opposed by a like sign?
Amen.